I still didn't quite register in my mind that this was a real business.
Yeah.
But of course, how is it possible in 42 years since Cannonball, no one has ever said to me or I've never heard about this.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Dylan Optics sunglasses. You know those really cool sunglasses you see me wearing in every single video we've ever made, pretty much? Them's called Dylan Optics, and they are made right here in the US of A, Scottsdale, Arizona, in fact. And there's so many things that I love about these sunglasses, on top of the fact that they are our longest sponsor. They've been with us for 13 years. They make the best glasses around. The NIR lens technology means that the polarization is even stronger than other high-end brands, and you can see it immediately. It's like HD life the second you put on Dylan Optics sunglasses. Plus, you've got that cool, instantly recognizable matte finish lens available in a whole bunch of different colors. In fact, every pair of Dylans is made to order. So you choose your frame style from up to 20 different styles. They've got the metal frame, the wire frame, the aviator style, the wraparound style, the wayfarer style, so many, multiple frame colors. Then you choose your lens. So the odds of seeing someone else with the same set of Dylans as you are super, super small. Dylans are also available in prescription. You can send them your prescription and they will make you a pair that fits perfectly. My wife wears prescription Dylan sunglasses and they are awesome. They look just like the other ones, but they're for your jacked up eyes. You know what I'm saying? If you go to thesmokingtire.com and click on that partners tab, you'll see the banner for Dylan Optics. That's the link. You don't have to type in any codes. Just go to thesmokingtire.com. Click on that banner. That'll take you over to their website. And when you order, we will send you a free Smoking Tire t-shirt for supporting the people who support us. Every pair you buy gets you a free t-shirt. Right? Right. Also, it's important to know this contest that we've got going on right now for a prototype version, one-of-one dark teal dial, a prototype watch of my Notice Canyon that I designed with Notice watches. This is amazing. There are a couple of ways to enter. You can go over to my Instagram and find it. Basically, you have to either sign up for bethematch.com, and that's an entry. Okay, you could donate blood or platelets, that's an entry, or you could donate $100 to bethematch.com. I'm sorry, it's .org. It's not even .com. It's bethematch.org. Donate $100 or more, and if you send your proof of any of those things, either signing up and becoming a donor at Be The Match, donating blood or platelets, or donating $100, send that to peaceunique@thesmokingtire.com. Again, head over to Instagram. I've written this all out. You don't have to remember it. And if you go over there, you'll see that dark teal watch. That's how you can win it. There is only one like it that we will ever make, and you can take it home. I don't even have one. It's just for you. All right, folks, on this show, our pal Alex Roy is in studio. He has done something very interesting regarding a Cannonball adjacent service that exists totally legally and yet somehow in kind of a gray area. Of course, we were talking about long-distance, over-the-road medical transport, and we are talking about that today because it is a very, very interesting story. Of course, we're also talking about the state of autonomous vehicles, how that is going, tech, and EVs, and all these things that Alex Roy is an expert in. He's written an amazing story for The Drive. Go check that out. And he's joining us in studio today. Alex Roy is on the Smoking Tire Podcast.
And well, here we are.
And here we are.
And now they have to hire McKinsey to figure out how to get out.
Yeah. So confessions of things I didn't do but thought about really hard. Because, if you think about something hard enough, you're as guilty as if you did it. You don't believe that? There are people who think about stuff hard enough and long enough about bad things that don't do them longer than it would have taken to do them and get the benefits and keep it a secret.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
For example.
Wait. Let's analyze this theory real quick.
Well, I'll give you mine.
I want the example. I'm ready for the example.
Mine is not so bad, but in the early days of Team Polizei, when I was trying to think of like what can I get away with,
Yeah.
I had a long list, and so when I was like, can I wear a black German police uniform with jack boots, like to win a rally which has no prize money for no reason, I called my rabbi cousin. I said, "Is this okay?" And he said, "Will it help you win?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "Mazel tov." So I did it. So 10 years later,
I love a practical rabbi.
my father was in the Mel Brooks School of Comedy. He thought the producers were great.
Yeah.
Not everybody does.
Right.
So, but he liberated concentration camps, so he felt he earned it. So,
I earned the right to make fun of, to impersonate a German police.
Fine.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So
and for my progeny to do so as well. Yes, of course.
So years later, I'm looking at the early before BLM and all the events. Somebody had I saw a Blue Lives Matter sticker, like the flag with the blue stripe, and I thought, what take on this can I do that's edgy but not in bad taste? And I was like, let me do the green stripe. Polizei Lives Matter. Sure. And I was going to do it, but then I thought people would think I'm an environmentalist, which I wouldn't say that I am.
Yes.
So
rooted lives matter, as it were.
So
plant-based lives matter.
So I let it go, and I regret that. I feel like I should have done it.
I think that does satisfy requirements of making fun of the thing while not specifically being in poor taste. Right. And I'm sure leave a comment, folks, if you've got another color that makes fun of Blue Lives Matter while not being in poor taste.
But I'm not, the thing is, like, I have friends who are police officers who are okay, they're fine, they're great.
But that's not what that means.
Yeah, not anymore.
Yeah.
So
it's not about individuals. It's about not
political.
Shooting people.
It's political.
Also, and that. So anyway,
what do you got? What else you got?
How'd you like the Fast and the Furious musical parody?
I thought
we
it
went
was.
to see it last night.
I thought it was brilliant. So you've seen it before.
I've seen it. This was my 4th time seeing it. This entire second act is all new.
So do they?
And very, very good.
So the first act was about Fast 7?
8. The first act is pretty much like 1 through 8 summed up.
Right.
It
was a little bit of 2.
Yeah, but like it's mostly 8.
I saw 1, 2, 5, and 8.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter, right? You don't really.
So did the second act in the prior performances focus on different sequels?
The second act in prior performances was a little more random and not as focused as it was
on John Cena
on 9,
right?
Which the when we saw it pre-pandemic in 2019, the 9 had either just come out or not come out yet, and like the space, they hadn't gone.
Did they
to
really
space.
go to space?
Yes.
I stopped watching the movies.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It was a car. It was insane. But yeah. So the
S9 came out in 2021. So
yeah. So yes, it was before. So now the second act is really about the ridiculousness of 9.
It was very, very well done. I mean, it's great, and I would see it again. I mean, it's in this. I remember growing up, I went to see Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
And then I saw Showgirls, the midnight musical.
You said that last night, and I would love to go see that.
I mean, that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I remember I saw Reanimator, the musical. You seen that?
I haven't. I know it exists, but I have not seen it.
Dude, it's...
I've seen the movie.
Have you ever seen Guar in concert?
Oh, yeah.
So
Irving Plaza, dude.
So Reanimator the musical is like seeing Guar without the band. Just talking. But they're singing. But not. And so, have you seen the Guar documentary on Netflix? Or
no,
Amazon Prime?
But I must.
Oh my God!
Yeah, no, that sounds add to my list for sure.
I had no idea how brilliant they were. I mean, I've seen them live.
I've seen interviews with them, and they're like, "Oh, wait, actually, hang on, you guys."
Odorous Orungus. I mean, the documentary is so good. That I wish I could go back in time.
It must still be out. I'm sure I can
it's
get
on
it.
Amazon.
Okay,
whatever.
I'll get it somewhere.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So that's where I felt last night.
Shout out to Brad and Joey, the writers who came on the show.
The first two guys who
Brad
came
was
on
the one
stage?
with the big Jufro.
Yeah.
And Joey played the good car.
Geniuses.
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 Yeah. The guy who plays Tube Man is fucking amazing.
The best of many brilliant performances. When he first came out, I didn't quite get it, and then when I got it, I'm like, I can't even look at
it. It was
this
the funniest thing, and our friend Frankie, who plays Charlize Theron, is amazing as well, and has an incredible voice. Yes. Can you, Zach, pull up their Instagram, the Fast and Furious Music, and see when their next dates are? Because I want to plug them as best we can. If you are in LA, you must go see it, and if you are not in LA, is that the only show they had on schedule? And if you're not in LA, it is worth a trip to LA to see it. It is. The next show was last night. Okay, well, go follow Fast and Furious _musical on Instagram, and it is a good fucking time. The second act is tight as shit, and it's really, really funny.
I should go see this one.
Yeah, it's worth seeing again. And I forgot how fucking funny some of the songs are. The archetypal character song is fantastic.
Will you tell them that, because they quote you twice on their About page.
Oh, do they really?
And but in one of them is a typo in your last name.
Oh, 2 R's? Yeah, everyone fucks
But the second
that up.
one is done correctly.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
The funny... they have to update that because I've now been 4 times.
How has any cast member from the film...
By the way, I think Dude, What a Great Idea is the other half of the conversation I had with Joe Rogan. I'm pretty sure that's... it was great.
Have any cast members from the movie been to the show?
No, but I would love to take Sung
that
Kang.
Would be the move.
Sung would probably go.
Yeah.
He would actually find it very funny, I think. I don't know if anyone has, but it's fucking great.
There was a guy named Jordan Van Dina a few years ago who would write spoofs of movies in 30 minutes or less, and then he had one of them performed. You know this guy?
No.
The story just ended.
Sounds fun.
The story's over.
Okay.
We'll find Jordan Van Dina in another episode. Let's talk.
That sounds like a good creative writing challenge, though.
Yeah, he's really funny.
But these guys, Joey and Brad did such a great job writing it. The songs are really funny, and it's really well acted.
Yeah, it is. It is. I love that every character is played by a woman. Pretty much, it's like 2 dudes. Yeah,
like Tyrese, Ludacris, and The Rock are all played by women.
Yeah, they're better.
They are better.
I mean, there was the Fast and Furious spoof on SNL years ago, the Faster and the Furious.
Oh yeah,
and they really captured.
Yeah,
I mean, because it's very gay. SNL, like, I'm going to check out your undercarriage.
Was it the Fast and the Bi-Curious?
Yes.
I think
I'm going to check out your undercarriage. I'm going to oil that. Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Are you going to oil that? I'll oil that first.
Making my head hot. It was just fucking go follow them on social media and buy tickets to their next show because it's fucking hysterical. Okay, so you drove all the way here from Phoenix, not just to see the Fast and the Furious musical, but also worth the trip. But because you did a thing that you thought I would find hilarious, and you told me the nuts and bolts of it, but you have an iPad.
No, it's just because I have some notes
about the thing. Do you want to go into that, or do you want to do some other things first and come back to that? You want to tease it and come back?
No, well, we can do it right now. It's fine.
Okay.
So my mother. In recent years, her fell ill, and then a few months ago, she fell in New York where she lived, and it turned out she has dementia, and so it became clear that she needed to be put into a place to live where she'd be safe, and so I had moved to Phoenix, and I'm like, how do I get my mother cross country? I'm like, well, I could drive her myself, but she needs like medical assistance.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I could fly her, but how would I do that? I'm like, well, I'm going to hire a nurse and this is going to plane. So all our people we know who've done the cannonball know people who have built fake ambulances to replicate the 1971 Brock Yates Transcon Medevac.
Which is like possibly the most famous real fake ambulance ever.
It's the best.
Do you have a picture of that, Zach? The Brock Yates Transcon Medevac ambulance.
Yeah.
Which once you see it, it's actually the same ambulance that was used in the movie.
Yeah.
That Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise. Oh, look at that.
And so I looked at that, and in an almost like Spinal Tap-ian moment, I'm like, wait a second. Spinal Tap in the movie, the 84 movie, became so popular, they became a real band and toured. And I saw Spinal Tap live at Carnegie Hall.
I think I did as well, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And they performed songs, like new songs. They had 2 albums.
I saw them do, it was an acoustic set, and they did some A Mighty Wind songs also.
Exactly. I think we were at the same show.
Maybe. Certainly the same run.
So I'm looking at the Transcon Medevac, and there are teams out there who have built them and still run them in, the 2904 event and the C2C tribute runs.
Like they do vintage cannonballs.
Correct.
Now. Yeah.
And so I'm like, has anyone? I'm like, do I call them and get my mother cross country? I'm like,
in a 1977 Dodge Tradesman.
So I'm like, why don't I just Google cross country ambulance service? And I land on a website for a company called Air Critical Care, and the website is all about air transport of people who are sick over distance. And I was thinking Uber, if you get an Uber Black long distance, they charge you $10,000. But it doesn't make no sense. So I call up Air Critical Care, and I'm like, I get a quote for flying cross country with my mom, and it was something like
$50,000,
$50,000 or $60,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you guys do ground transport? They're like, well, of course. I'm like, do you have an ambulance that will drive cross country? Yes. Will it drive cross country nonstop? They're like, of course, we specialize in that. I'm like, what does that cost? They're like, about $14,000. So
still not cheap. That's
it's
expensive.
not cheap.
Yeah. But
however,
it's a third of the price of flying.
And so I'm like, I thought
you were going to tell me it was called Transcon Medevac.
No,
and
it
I was
shouldn't have.
It's like, fuck me, they actually used the company.
So I'm like, I still didn't quite register in my mind that this was a real business.
Yeah.
But of course, how is it possible in 42 years since Cannonball, no one has ever said to me or I've never heard about this.
Yeah.
So I called them up and I called them back. I'm like, have you heard of the Cannonball run? And the woman's like, well, I think so. I'm like, you're too young. Find me someone who has.
Can I speak to someone in their 50s?
Can I speak to someone in your Cannonball department? And so I explained to the person on the phone, I'm like, yeah, look, here's my situation. They're like, sounds cool. So I explained more of who I was, sent an email with my background, and then got a call back from someone else. I'm like, can I talk to marketing, someone in your marketing department? Because I really would like to help you guys.
I would really like to not pay for this trip. How do I do that?
And so eventually it came to, I said, look, can I shoot video on the ride? What are the details? And so here are the details.
Folks, got to take a quick break from the action to pay a few bills. And today them bills are being paid by Brook Linen in their fall collection. They make bedding, sheets, pillowcases, duvet covers, all that stuff. In fact, they sent me all of that stuff, and I am sleeping in it right now, tonight. I got some new colors. I got some new patterns. It's like a whole new bed over there. I like the sheets because they stay cool, right? I'm a hot sleeper. That probably wouldn't surprise you. But my very petite wife, very petite, very fit, also a hot sleeper. That one may be a bit of a surprise. And these sheets are nice and cool. But it's the perfect time to upgrade your bedding and some home essentials. As we get into fall, you're spending more time inside and keeping it cozy. You know what I'm saying? Brook Linen is where it's at. It was founded by a husband and wife duo in 2014, and their mission is to provide their customers with hotel-quality, award-winning luxury bedding. They've got over 100,000 five-star reviews and endorsements from the experts at Good Housekeeping and Wirecutter, and Brook Linen sheets are made with long staple cotton for longevity and softness. Haven't had them long enough to endorse the longevity portion of it yet, but they are soft and delightful. It is a serious upgrade to your bedroom. Grab that bed and bath bundle for a good night's rest and a new at-home spa routine. You can save time and up to 25% when bundling your new favorite home essentials. Experience the difference for yourself. Check out Brook Linen's new fall collection. You can visit them in store or online at brooklinen.com and use code TIRE, T-I-R-E, for $20 off your online order of $100 or more. That's BROOKLINEN.com. Promo code TIRE, $20 off. Love that Brook Linen. We are also brought to you today by Prize Picks. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just you against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You pick more than or less than on 2 through 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings just roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun I've ever had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. It's really simple to play. Make my picks, submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. PrizePicks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts every Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. And they offer now Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Right? Right. I'm picking players. I'm choosing more than, less than. That's easy. It is fun. It is straightforward. And you can get some skin in the game. Go to prizepicks.com/tire and use code TIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. Right? prizepicks.com/tire and then use code TIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. And now back to the show.
They do point to point any distance. They up to anything in like the continental United States.
Yeah, they charge by the mile.
I don't know actually. I think it's by the time.
Okay.
So the vehicles, they have a fleet of Mercedes Sprinter vans that I think there's like 25 or 30 of them that they buy stock and then they rebuild from the ground up. They have a facility in Florida in Punta Gorda, and they would claim, I think it's true, to be the best of the best. And I looked at some of the competitors, and they're using smaller, crappier vehicles. And 2 drivers, 1 or both are cross-trained as EMTs, paramedics. There's a nurse on board. There's a place for 1 or 2 stretchers. And there is like a lounge or sleeping zone for like a family member to accompany. So,
and is it more set up like a luxury van with some amenities, or is it more set up like an ambulance?
Luxury van.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, depends on your standard of luxury.
Right, but not like we've all seen what an ambulance looks like. It's not that.
It's not that.
Okay.
What's the company that does the Sprinter van conversions like 150,000 or 2,000?
Yeah, there's like a bunch of them.
So it's almost that nice.
But with a
there's this place for a stretcher to go in.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of stretchers because I've been in and out of the hospital with my mother, but they have the Modify, like the best stretcher there is, to be even like nicer, and it's beautiful, like the silent, like articulated thing when it goes in, and so you basically just tell them like what food you want on board, and they're very accommodating. And I can't lie, up to the day of the pickup at my mother's rehab facility in Manhattan, I wasn't entirely sure that it wasn't all like a scam. Like if nobody showed up and my credit card had been run, I'd be like, of course. But I filled out the paperwork. I read everything about them online. It seemed legit. And my mom, who's still kind of aware of what's going on, was very excited. She's like, cannonball cross country? I've always wanted to go with you.
It's almost like Farrah Fawcett in the movie.
Yeah, she was a little out of it. And so at 9 p.m. on a Monday, I'm on the Upper West Side at the rehab facility, and the van arrives.
At 9 p.m.?
Yes. So they schedule it.
They understand cannonball.
Well, I asked them.
Because isn't that when you're supposed to leave?
They'll leave anytime you want.
Okay.
But I said to them, how long will it take to get across? And they said, well, we don't want to give you a time. I'm like, well, that's not the answer I'm looking for. Yeah. Because what I'm really looking for is the cannonball record with a real pass, with a real patient. Because that's a record. It's never been done.
You didn't tell them you wanted to go to the Redondo Beach?
No,
did you?
But I did ask them.
How much to go to Redondo Beach and then back to Phoenix?
I did. And I thought that would, as my mother's power of attorney and medical proxy, I felt that would be a breach of my responsibility to my family.
You know what? Respect. Because Alex Roy of 10 years ago
Oh, I would have absolutely
100% been like, she wants to see. She's always wanted to see Redondo while she can remember.
She's always wanted to see that pier for 10 seconds to stamp
Why
something.
is the pickup at a parking garage on East 33rd Street?
Mom, punch the ticket. Punch the ticket.
If we had done this any earlier, I probably would have.
6 months ago, you would have said Red Ball Garage to Redondo Beach Pier.
Well, there's a punchline of the story at the end. We'll come to that.
Sorry, continue.
So
9 p.m. the van arrives.
They arrive, and the crew gets out, and it's this like guy who's like 6'2" and handsome, named David Zechner, and the other guy Eric Luna, and they looked straight out of central casting for like like private pilots, and the nurse Jan, I think is Zalecki, and they come out, and the professionalism of these people. Like I've been in a lot of ambulances, and they can be kind of schlocky. They came out, and instantly everyone's like, "Wow, these guys look really fit and together and ready." They went upstairs, talked to my mom. She liked them. We went downstairs. Nikhil and JF showed up to see us off. They're like, wow, this is a really professional operation. I'm like, it better be for what it costs.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And so we piled in. And so Luna says to me, he's like, I've got first stint. You're up front with me. So I'm like, what gear do you have?
Now, this is a non-stop drive.
Non-stop.
Other than fuel, non-stop.
Correct. Non-stop.
Okay. And that's do they offer like...
Stops?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you could request stops.
Right. But the point is a non-stop drive.
So, when you have a patient, an older person who has dementia, you want to reduce the number of transfers home to home, vehicle to home. You want to reduce because of the stress.
Yeah.
Also, it's just more efficient to go straight through. It's the point of it. And the only limiting factor is the top speed of the vehicle. Which is limited, I think it's like 80 something.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, it's like hard limited. And so we get in, and he's like, we're off. And he just sets Waze to the coordinates in Phoenix, and we start going. And I'm like, that's it? He's like, that's all you need. The vehicle, the first thing I know.
If you can't go over 85, what other strategy do you need? I mean, that's, yeah.
So the first thing I noticed is that
Is he just running his phone through CarPlay? Was it standalone?
No, it was standalone.
Okay.
Standalone. So they load up my mom in the back. Jan is the nurse. She's sitting in the back. And they have a barrel of snacks.
Yeah.
And the bunk for the second driver and me up front with Eric Luna. And does
the other driver immediately go to sleep?
Immediately. Huh. Yeah. And they're like religious about it. Because there's no stopping.
So there's probably like a time clock basically on it. What is a shift? Is it a tank of gas?
It's a tank. Okay. A little less than a tank. He said, I think if I recall, that at about 15-20% they swap.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, the vehicle had like 580,000 miles on it or something.
That's awesome.
And I was like, well, I mean, is that standard? He's like, yep, we run them until they are, they just can't go any further, and like they're maintained incredibly. So they have a facility in.
Did it look like a 500,000 mile vehicle?
It looked like new.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these are really well maintained. And when I was going through it, I was trying to see what was new, and he's like, if anything goes wrong, when the ride ends, we go to get it fixed. Mm-hmm. So they have their facility in Punta Gorda. I think it's like 10,000 square feet, and they rebuild them and modify them, and then they have deals with dealerships around the country. They can roll in on short notice and get anything fixed.
Yeah.
I was frankly shocked. I mean, I'm just not used to seeing high mileage vehicles run like that all the time.
Yeah.
Any cannonball car gets run and then just basically disassembled
back
together. So
I was once in Portland.
Yeah.
I don't remember why, but I got a taxi. It was a cab. This was pre-Uber, and I got a cab, and it was a Previa, and it had 800,000 miles on it. It was really nice, and I was obviously very impressed and talking to the driver about his Previa. Turns out he owns a taxi company that exclusively used Previas, and he had 20 Previas, and he said the lowest mileage on any Previa he had was 400,000 miles. And he said he will only ever, this was 10, 12 years ago, but he said he would only ever buy Previas. So, and it was pretty nice. It wasn't like a shit box.
I remember Mercedes, when taxis in Europe were only Mercedes, 300s.
And that now those taxis are those cars are taxis like in the Congo.
Still running.
Yeah, still going. Okay, so did they have lights and sirens?
No.
Okay,
no.
so it was just a van.
Yeah, but I mean,
the outside.
They're black with like a kind of U.S. flag graphic on the front. On the side, it says air critical care, like long distance medical transport. So people do respect and get out of the way. And I said, well, I asked him, what, do you ever get, have you been pulled over?
Yeah.
He's like, we've been pulled over, but nobody tickets us.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, we're not going fast enough anyway. But people always assume we're doing something important. And they have apparently a lot of, most of the people are older couples or an older person and their spouse who want to take them back home to live out the remaining years with family. But they occasionally have like a celebrity. And they sign strict non-disclosures. I was most surprised, beyond the vehicle just being so well maintained, just by the level of professionalism. They looked, sound, and acted like airline pilots.
Well, at that price point and at what they're doing, other than the ability to literally fly a plane, there's not much different than what a pilot would be doing.
There was no corners cut, no...
Seems like a good job for somebody, actually. If you really like driving, it seems like I've done a lot of miles in a Sprinter. That's a nice thing to do, 80 miles an hour on the freeway for long hours.
Well, I asked these guys what because both guys were... I'm going to guess that they were probably both in their 50s. Mm-hmm. They were quite fit, so it was hard to tell.
Retired military.
So Eric Luna was an LEO firearms instructor and a DJ who just was really into cars.
Yeah.
And Zechner was the general manager of a Mercedes dealership for decades.
Interesting.
And he was semi-retired and liked to travel. Jan was a nurse most of her life, but she was also into motorcycles and had bikes her whole life. And so all of them said they love helping people and they love traveling. And so they get to see the country because they drive long distance.
Yeah, and they get a couple rest days.
Yeah, they get a couple days at a hotel, hang out local, and then go on the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and eventually get back home.
Yeah.
And they all had been doing it a long time and were great friends with everyone else on the team. I think there was 25 or 30 people on crew. And that was my friend Keith Baskin flew the plane for my Cannonball.
Yeah.
He's a pilot he does Trans-Pacific flights for United.
Okay.
And they sounded more like him than anyone else I've ever met. Mm-hmm. And I really liked them. Another interesting thing is one of the guys, Zechner, at one point he's listened to a podcast, and I'm like, oh, what podcast is listening to? And he's like, well, it's personal. And I thought
listening in headphones.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting because clearly part of their training is to do their job first and not and respect the boundaries of the passengers because they're going to be in the car together for 30, 40 hours.
Yeah, you don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah, and so
awkward.
And so we talked about that, and I thought that was also really interesting because we live in a really polarized time where the wrong thing can set some people off, and these people knew exactly how to handle me.
Yeah.
So that was really a maturity to the training of the folks that I didn't expect. Now
he didn't pull an earbud away and you hear Alex Jones's voice.
No. But
Fogger game.
What
I
I also love about them is I about 15 hours in, I'm like, all right, guys, I have to ask, have you seen Cannonball run? And they're like, well, of course.
Yeah.
I'm like, Luna, would you do it? He's like, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm like, would you do it in one of these? He's like, well, probably not fast enough, but yes, I would do it in a heartbeat. And they all said the same, they love it. And I remember that you told me that you had people say to you that they found it offensive.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a trend, but I had a couple of people who, and I forget the actual context of the conversation. I think we were recently talking with Arnie Toman, Arnie Toman, who was here a couple weeks ago. And after that podcast, someone said to me that, because we were joking about the ambulance and all that kind of shit, and they said it was, an insult to first responders and basically that, that if doing a cannonball is one thing, doing it in a fake ambulance is is akin to being a con man because you're taking advantage of the public trust in the ambulance and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, my response to the guy was like, bro, the Cannonball Run was like 1983. I think it's probably okay. It's not like something people are regularly doing in fake emergency response vehicles.
Well, let me tell you about the real first responders who drive these things. They think it's fantastic, and they all want to do it, all of them. And
I mean, you got to figure that there's at least to use Alex Roy language, there is a non-zero chance that if you sign up to drive an emergency vehicle of some type, you are doing so at some level because you think it'll be fun to not have rules in this car.
Absolutely, that's
doesn't
a
matter if it's
non-zero
an
chance.
ambulance,
Right.
a fucking fire truck, or a highway patrol car. You, on some level, I have to believe that you find it fun to hit that fucking siren and go, no more rules for me. I'm doing what I got to do.
It's true. I know
Right?
I know that's why I dressed like a fake cop back in the day. That's absolutely why I did. And I love turning the lights and sirens on.
Who doesn't?
The other half, or at least the I guess the serious part is when I asked them about why they do it, what they get out of it, and like the most interesting thing that happened. I was expecting like a fun one, and they all said that they know it's the last drive for a lot of people, and that they want to be the person to help those people get home, and that sometimes people will ask for a detour.
They want to see something on the way.
Sometimes they will ask, basically that's their last vacation. They want to be driven to all these places. And
will they do that?
Yeah. And Jan told me that an elderly woman passed away on the drive with her husband sitting next to her as they were on one of these trips.
Yeah.
And I was like really upset, and she seemed like she was glad that she could help these people do that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't get that opportunity. And that was, for me, the big takeaway from the trip was that the people were very emotionally invested in doing the job as well as possible. Mm-hmm. And my mother's not in great shape, but she was aware of what was happening, and really liked Jan and the guys. So I was really moved at the end. And which leads us to the lesson. Like, I always thought that I wanted to, like, if anything happened to me and I got sick, I wanted to be in a nursing home with immersive VR playing World of Warcraft with my high school buddies, like, with headsets. But no. I would absolutely want to call Air Critical Care, have them, like, remove the roof of the van, and I want to rebuild a Mad Max style convertible ambulance with a metal guitarist on it with a flamethrower.
It's basically like a Bizarro Pope mobile,
yes.
right?
And I want a throne on the back, open to the world, open air throne, and
nice little morphine drip going.
Yep, with these guys, Luna and Zechner, and I want them to remove the speed limiter from nothing. I want to drive. I'll pay $1 million. I want to drive as fast as possible, New York to LA, and I want an ejector seat. When they get to the coast, shoot me into the ocean. I'm done.
Kids, we got to take one more quick break from the action for Lectric e-bikes. They sent us a e-bike, Lectric e-bikes did, and this thing is sweet. Getting outside, I love e-bikes, right? I think e-bikes are a great idea because not only are they good exercise. The electric e-bike does have pedals. It's a pedal bike. But with that battery and pedal assist, you can get places that you might not otherwise go on a bike. Huge hills, for instance. Look, I'm not going to lie and be like, no one can get up a huge hill on a bike. Yeah, some people do. That's like real exercise, though. And you don't always want to get like super exercise on your bike, like on your way to work. Like, for instance, if you have one of these electric e-bikes and there's a big hill on your way to work, you might not ride a regular bike because you don't want to be at work all sweaty all day, right? But with electric e-bike, you could get there and it's not like a workout. You're just getting there, right? They're fun, they're easy, and they're an affordable way to get moving. With pedal assist and throttle included, plus a convenient foldable design, you can take your fall adventures or your commute to a whole new level. The foldable design is key. The problem with a lot of electric bikes is they're big and they're heavy, and you can't always put them into a car. But with this electric e-bike, it folds up, and my co-host Zach, he put the electric e-bike in the back of a Honda Fit, took it with him on a little adventure, got out there, folded it open in 5 seconds. It was good to go. Electric e-bikes were designed to create a better mode of transportation for all riders, right? Whether you're looking for exercise or trying to get to work or trying to run errands, the electric e-bike is awesome. You can feel more in control with durable features and accessories designed for added safety and convenience. You could save on traditional transportation costs like gas, parking, and maintenance, and you could finance an electric e-bike as low as $73 per month. You can get started today. The electric e-bike ships free, comes fully assembled, and is foldable for easy travel and storage anywhere you go. E-bikes have the same safety regulations as regular bikes, plus they're durable while staying relatively lightweight. In most states, licensing, registration, etc. are not required for e-bikes, and you can enjoy the same road access as a standard bike. Right? I love the electric e-bike because it just allows me to skip traffic, right? Not use my car. It's great. And it's fun. It is straight up fun, right? So get out there and try an electric e-bike like their XP Lite, starting at just $7.99. Oh yeah, did I say it's affordable? $7.99 for an e-bike is very, very affordable. So visit lectricebikes.com to find the electric model for you. That's Lectric ebikes.com. Lectricebikes.com. Check them out. But let's get back to the show.
I think people have
like right off the end of the Santa Monica Pier.
People have end of life all wrong, man. All wrong. Like Thelma and Louise, but on crack. Like that's the way to do it. And so, and these are the guys
with like Secret Service level drivers.
Whatever it takes. Yeah, absolutely. Like that's the dream. It's my dream. And so I'm writing a piece about it. I think I'm going to call it like Mom's Last Cannonball. Because all these years she wanted to do, she came to all my start lines and finish lines.
Yeah.
And she always wanted to do something like this. And so.
What was the time?
Oh, New York to
Phoenix.
To Phoenix. I think it was a pretty good time.
Was it?
I think.
How quick were the fuel stops? They do two nozzles, one nozzle?
One nozzle.
Two nozzles? No way. That would be
one
epic.
Nozzle, and we usually get to stop to get a bite to eat.
Yeah. Was there extended range? Was it an extended fuel tank or standard fuel tank?
Actually, I forget. I have notes.
Was one of the gurneys did have a fuel bladder on it? Like auxiliary?
There's a mannequin that's just a fucking person-sized gas.
No, I forget. I think the time was like 36 hours, 38 hours. It was a time. It was a good time.
It is, but it's a long direct drive. If you're not like making a game of it.
Yes. I mean, look, they're also running a business, so there's and the patient, you don't want to have the person in the back,
I would like
too
to see,
long.
and what, at the end, what did the invoice look like? I mean, you gave a number, but how was it broken down and itemized?
No.
Okay.
They gave me the quote, and I was like, well,
fine.
This is what my mother wanted, and she wanted to be near me and her granddaughter.
Can you expense it to the drive?
No. Okay. To the drive? No.
To whoever. Who are you writing for?
I'm for the drive.
Okay, yeah. So they won't,
no,
I
can't expense it. There are some exotic insurance coverages that one could use. I'm not an expert in those. What's it called? I asked the CEO, I think it's Michael Pete, the CEO. He was Air National Guard pilot and originally started the company in 2010. It was pretty recent. I asked him, I'm like, did you start this after the movie came out? He's like, no, we started in 2010 because no one was operating a service at this level of, a company at this level of service. There are companies doing it in like Econoline vans and like smaller vehicles, but the comfort for the patients is not there, and the space is not there for a second family member and a nurse and the gear and all that
I imagine long wheelbase, high roof, the big van.
Yeah. And
did Mercedes with the Sprinter
it's amazing.
Just nailed it.
And so I asked him, I said, what does it cost to fly, cross country like this way? I think it's like $50,000 or $60,000.
Yeah.
But there are patients who need to go back to Europe. And that can be $100,000, $125,000.
Yeah.
And so there's clearly a business there. And
and my grandfather had a stroke in like 1993 or something, and he was in Florida. My father paid for a private jet for him to come back to New Jersey where he lived. And I mean, I don't remember the number, but I mean, my dad's pretty fucking rich, and he was like, "You're not going to believe what this costs."
I mean, it's real money, but it's also
crazy.
a once in a lifetime expense.
Yeah, it's not something it's not like something you want to do, but it was.
When I was looking at the costs of so like end of life care and nursing homes and things, it's.
Yeah. I've seen The Sopranos. Fucking Green Grove. $8 a month for this fucking broad.
Yeah. So that's what I'm working on.
It's such an interesting business, though.
It is.
I can't believe it's not called Transcon Medevac. And does anyone own the trademark?
I actually have not looked that up.
I mean, that would be an opportunity.
Well, They
should at least do. You know how like most Delta planes are like Delta, but every once in a while there'll be one that's like Lord of the Rings themed, right? They should have a Cannonball enthusiast one van.
Yeah, they should.
Transcon Medevac livery. Now we're fucking talking, dude.
I'll connect you to the guys who run the business, and you can talk to them. They do have a pretty intimidating graphic on the side. Long distance medical transport.
But I imagine they carry no special privilege when it comes to the use of the roads. They're subject to the same laws as everybody else.
But everybody gives them like wide berth and respect. You get to the gas station and you get out of that thing. Everyone's like, whoa.
Yeah,
like, that's cool.
Because they look. What are they wearing?
They're wearing uniform shirts. Like they have like.
Look pilot-ish.
Yes, they definitely look pilot-ish.
Yeah. Hats.
No
hats. Crew cut, haircut.
Yeah, they
like
look
a Steinbrenner, no mustache.
They look ex-military.
They
do. And Jan had like short hair.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had told me that they were all faking it and they were actually out doing a record, I would have believed that too.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat, because they do look the part.
Yeah, they've committed.
Yes, they've fully committed.
Yeah.
Or this is their cover, and they're actually like a hit squad or something.
If you wanted to move units, I mean,
this would be the way to do it.
We don't know what's in that top storage rack in this van. That would be a cover.
High roof on the outside, it's low roof on the inside.
So in 2008, when I was on my book tour, did I ever tell you how I got invited to the FBI Academy?
I mean, I remember that you were invited. I don't remember the exact circumstances.
I received an email. And the subject line was, "Would you like to meet the FBI?" So that's obviously
that's a yes/no question with one answer.
And so
usually when you meet them, they don't ask.
No, so I forwarded it to my attorney, who had vetted my whole Cannonball thing, and he says, "Well, it is from an FBI.gov domain, so." Let me respond.
Yeah.
And it turned out that it was from them, and I got to go down, and when I never told you this story. So it was in a line.
It's been a lot of stories,
so
a lot of years, my friend.
I drive
Let's just say you haven't told the audience this story.
Well, there's a few stories we can't tell the audience.
Yeah.
But this one, I drive the M5, fully liveried with Italian police.
Yeah.
Maybe it was German police at the time. German police. I drive it to Virginia, and the agent, who was quite senior, said, "You can come stay at my house." Mm-hmm. So I'm driving the car to his house and spend the night there. He had some large dogs, and his wife was also an agent. They had like 8 cell phones in the charging rack. He was lovely. And then the next morning he says, "My wife and I have to get up early, go to work. Here's the address. Just meet us at Quantico." So I'm like, all right. So drive there, and you have to go through the military base, circular checkpoint. So they're all very curious about the car. So I get through the military checkpoint, and I've got to get to the FBI Academy, which is in the middle. And I get lost and there's like a shooting range, and so I'm late to get to the appointment at the FBI Academy to do a presentation about Cannonball Run, and so I'm speeding around the base, get pulled over by military police, and get equivalent of like a ticket.
Yeah.
And then they direct me to the FBI section. I get there and meet all the agents, get a tour of the motor pool. And that's a whole episode. But I took the agent that invited me there. I said to him, I'm like, exactly what were you thinking when you invited me to come talk here? Like, what do you think you can learn besides the entertainment part? And he's like, well, this is 2008. Imagine a bad guy wanted to move something from A to B over distance in this country and not get caught. So if you can move a car from A to Z at high speed and not get caught, and you have no professional training, using only off-the-shelf tools and mapping and apps, then how hard would it be for someone with really bad intent to do something like that slow and get away with it? It'd be quite easy.
Yeah.
So, and you just did it. So anything we can learn from you about the methods and tools you used, we would like to learn. And the other thing I wanted to learn was, how does one get people who are not financially motivated to have that kind of loyalty to help you? And so, like, well, how did you how'd you recruit your friends and teammates to sign NDAs to get involved?
Sure.
Because like that also is fascinating to us. Yeah. And that was it. And so I said, well, can you give me examples of other people you've had here?
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, well, we had the guy from Catch Me If You Can. Like, there's a whole program. We had those guys come down, and then he's like, well, let me put it to you this way. He's like, it's human psychology is a really fascinating thing. For example, one of the things that we teach here is like, how do you think creatively to solve a problem in an investigation? He's like, it's not what you have to do, it's how you do it. For example, if you want to record someone sitting on a park bench, and that person goes to the park bench every day the same place. It's a guy. You have to get him talking. You want to eavesdrop on who he's talking to. Well, you can send a female agent to sit near him, or just walk near him. It's like, or you can do it the way the Israelis do it. Like, how's that? He's like, well, you get a female agent with a dog. And you make sure it's the kind of dog he likes.
Yeah.
And then you got a bone you throw near him. He has a mic in the bones, a mic in the tree. There's mics everywhere, but there's a dog.
Yeah.
And he's like, the human psychology, you can never escape it.
That's
and he's like, so Alex, we want to understand what motivated you and how you got your friends to get involved.
Well, that to me seems like a pretty straightforward answer, which is that all these people were motivated by and interested by that particular goal, and the way that you were able to speak eloquently about your desire which if you were moving drugs or guns, that motivation would be much harder. But also, like, to me, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but it seems like if you wanted to move shit across the country,
it'd be really easy.
It'd be really easy. All you do is don't do the drugs in the car and don't fucking speed. I mean, that's it. There's nothing else to it.
Since we're in the spirit of musical comedies and movies about cars, there was a movie. There was a movie called a French movie, and the title was Les Go Fast. And I heard about it years ago, and allegedly the movie was allegedly based on a real story of a French cop whose job it was to stop a group of drug smugglers who used sports cars to transport drugs from like Gibraltar to Paris.
Okay.
The instant I heard this, I'm like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Because no drug smuggler would be so stupid as to put drugs in an expensive car and drive it fast from Gibraltar to Paris. So did you find it? So here it is. Go fast.
In reality, this describes the founding of the gumball.
Yeah. So I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. No criminal would do that. This alleged ex-cop made the whole story up for like a book and got a movie made about it.
Yeah.
Then, a few years ago, I read that a bunch of gumballers, a gumballer was arrested. I forget the details. With his Ferrari had millions of dollars of gold bars in it.
Yes.
And that he was smuggling them to support the presidential campaign of an Ecuadorian candidate.
awesome.
So apparently,
Someone
there
has
are
thought
people
of this.
exactly that stupid.
Well, you need the rest of the rally as a decoy. Do you remember the Dakar truck?
No.
Somebody built a fake but identical Dakar rally support truck, like one of those like Kamaz with like Red Bull shit on it, or one of the here. Dakar rally team founder after 1.4 tons of cocaine seized in France.
Were they driving across France?
They were driving in the fucking rally.
No. What year was that?
Hidden in a truck. The truck was. Oh no, they drove the truck in the rally, and the team was on its return from South America. Authorities found 1.393 tons of cocaine wrapped in plastic. Blah blah blah. And after the truck arrived at the northern port of Le Havre.
So when I was on in 2011,
the ship carrying the truck was loaded with vehicles returning from last month's Dakar rally. So. Yeah.
So when I was on in 2011, I did the Baja 1000.
Yeah.
And before I went, I was trying to find books about it, and I found a book that was self-published. I forget what it's called, but by a guy who claimed he went on the Baja and went down there and ended up partying with like a girl whose dad was a drug lord and drugs, and I'm like that doesn't sound true. But on the Baja itself, during the race, there's like a dry lake bed that you had to cross. It looked like the Haboob desert scene in Mad Max.
Yeah.
Because you're following other vehicles that are kicking up huge clouds. And we're going across this dry lake bed, and in the middle of it, suddenly the dust stops and there's a clearing, and the Mexican army's there. And they stopped every vehicle and searched us for drugs.
So I guess it's a thing.
So it must be a thing.
It is a thing.
But back to the FBI Academy visit, because as I got my tour and we're cruising around, I'm wearing my Polizei jacket. And the agent...
Which was a choice. You could have you could have worn a regular ass jacket that day.
But I would never do that. Of all places, I'm going to wear the jacket to the academy. So I'm wearing the German police jacket, and I get a tour of the bookstore, and I buy an FBI jacket that they wear on raids.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't they sell one to me? And we're
There's no way they still sell those to people.
Well, it's on the campus of the FBI Academy.
Okay. Yeah.
And so...
But do they give tours there?
I don't know. I got a tour.
Yeah, but
so,
was it like
I don't think a tourist can cruise through, but they're the loveliest people. And I walking through, and there is a shrine, like a memorial to agents who fell in 9/11, and I'm there with the guy who brought me, and his assistant, and then I said to him, I'm like, thanks for this tour. He's like, well, we can't, be too public about your tour because it's very controversial that you're here. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, but it's cool. And so a guy approaches, and he's like, be cool. This guy's like my boss. And so this guy approaches, this high-ranking agent, and he looks at me, and he says, I heard you were there at the Trade Center. And I was. And I have a superficial cowardly nick on my head to prove it. And I was. And he looks at me, and we take a quiet moment at the 9/11 Memorial section. And then he says, come with me. And around the corner is a large lobby. And on the wall are patches of every police force from around the world that's ever visited that sent their people to Quantico for training. And then he looks at me, and he looks at the Polizei jacket, and he sees that the Velcro edge is sticking up, and he says, may I? And he takes the Polizei 144 gumball patch off the jacket, and he's like, ladder.
No fucking
and
way.
a person comes out with the ladder, and there's the German police section, and he sticks it up on the wall, and then we have a quiet moment. and then he walks away, and the agent who invited me says, let's just hope that I don't work here when the Germans arrive next year. So
That's
Yeah.
fucking crazy.
Yeah, but we're still friends today.
Where is that car? What happened to that car?
It's being restored at AI. Is
still at AI?
It's being restored, repainted, and put in period correct 2008 rally condition. I was thinking of selling it. I don't know.
It's either worth a shitload of money
or
or
nothing.
5 pennies.
Yeah. Well, so a guy.
If you can afford to keep it, just fucking
I can.
keep it.
It's well. The thing is, I can, but it's not near me. Can we negotiate?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so. It's
Do you want to keep it? Keep it at my new place.
Yeah, maybe I should. I just, somebody offered me like $125,000.
Oh, sell.
Last year, pre-restoration.
Really?
As is. I'm like,
you should have taken it. Sorry.
I was like, yeah. So
I know what AI charges. You should have taken it.
So yeah, it's a thing.
If you can afford to keep it, I mean, it's an incredible conversation.
Yeah, it just never gets
piece.
driven.
Yeah.
So
well, there's another option there, which is that you could drive it a little bit.
Yes, one could.
You now live in a place that has no fucking choice but to drive everywhere all the time.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So that's
dude, it's a lovely car.
It is.
How long did it sit for? Was it just cosmetically that it was kind of?
Yeah, I mean, it's every year it gets
stickers like fucked the paint.
The stickers
all
are
up.
removed.
Yeah.
And it's been. I mean, every year I have a mechanically run through, and so, but it's just sitting like it gets like 50 miles a year, 100 miles a year. It's
not.
So
you should leave it out here and use it as your LA car.
Yeah, could do it.
Then you don't have to drive 6 hours from Phoenix. You could take an $89 flight, and then your car's just here. That would be.
I've just been preoccupied with parents. Stuff.
Obviously, you're busy, but like it's I don't know. I feel like if it, 125 grand is lots if you get that, but otherwise, if you can afford to keep it, it's worth hanging on to.
I feel like it is. All the conversations you and I had 10, 15 years ago about the future of car collecting.
Yeah,
like we were more right than we knew.
Sure,
which is crazy.
And I mean, knowing what we know now about BMW and about fast saloon cars, at like the E39 M5 is the pinnacle of 4-door fast driver's cars.
Was it you who wrote an article recently comparing a CTS V to an M5?
No. I didn't write that, but I would. I mean, just here and now, I've driven both, and I would have the CTS or the CT5V as it is now, Blackwing.
Right. That's the one.
Every day of the week over a current M5.
I see.
And not everybody feels that way, and if you don't, okay. But like, I drove one 450 miles to Laguna Seca. Unbelievable, fast fucking highway car. Did about 60 laps of Laguna on a hot day. Kept up with some real fast cars, with some McLarens and stuff. Got smoked by a few as well. I'm not keeping up with a Senna or a 765 on slicks, but really held my own on track. And then turned on the air-conditioned massage seats and drove 6 hours home. I mean, what a...
Does it have Blue Cruise?
It does.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it?
I on certain bits of road, Blue Cruise is excellent. I mean, really, I think it's the best of those systems, and it knows when it's a good idea to work, and it knows when it's a good idea to not work.
Will a CT5 Blackwing in 25 years still be a car? Be like, I'm proud to own that.
I think so. I think that'll be a very desirable car for a very long time. I mean, if you had bought a 2012 CTS-V wagon,
that's
well, okay, fine. Forget the wagon.
That's a forever car.
Yeah. But if you had bought, forget the wagon, regular CTS-V manual.
Yeah.
You could have driven it 60 or 70,000 miles over these 10 years, and sold it for as much or more. Those could have
inflation
been free.
Adjusted.
In some cases, if it's a really nice car, if it's a really nice car, you could have beat inflation with it.
Well, how do you feel about a Dodge Magnum?
I think they're
I
very
saw one
cool.
on the road the other
I think
day.
they're very
They're
cool.
Yeah, is it
they're
good?
very cool.
Because
I mean,
I always wanted one.
Must have had one.
So
Yeah.
they're old now. That's the newest Magnum is like a 2007, I think. Maybe when did they stop making the Magnum? Maybe it was 08, but it's a first gen of that platform. If I had one, I would turn it into a modern,
an ambulance.
a modern help, like a modern help. What was it?
05 to 08.
05 to 08. So you could fit a Hellcat motor in there. You can put the current front end on it. Like, you could actually take that and bring it up. You could put the current interior in
Dude,
one.
the SRT8 had 425 horsepower. You could just put a blower on that thing.
You also could.
Right.
You also could do that.
That's
but like,
strong power.
You could basically do a full Hellcat red eye swap into one, like Freddie did, and have like today's car.
Have you ever driven a Volvette?
No. Wait, maybe.
Because
maybe I have.
like
a Volvo with an LS motor in it.
Yeah.
I think
an
I have.
850, like a wagon.
Yeah. No, it was a V90 maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty
Didn't
sure
Letterman
I
have one?
Letterman had one that Paul Newman built and gave him. Paul Newman did a few different ones. Paul Newman did one with a Grand National engine. He then did one with a Ford 302, and he then did one with an LS. And from what I understand, and this comes from Seinfeld, the LS one was by far the best one because it managed heat the best, and it had the most power for the least.
Nice.
Yeah, that's an LS too. Yeah. That was the LS. I think he did 3 or 4.
Built by
kinda
Newman
want
Haas Racing.
Well,
If the comfort is there,
doable.
that's what,
Well, the comfort. Have you ever driven that generation Volvo, the V70, V90, have amazing seats. Really comfortable.
My dad, who only had like sports cars his whole life. His last car was a '77 Fleetwood Broom, and he owned it for 23 years. And every year I'm like, why don't you get a better car? And he's like, better car? Let's go to the Mercedes dealership and I'll show you a better car. We'd ride it every year, an S-Class, whatever, a new 7 Series, whatever it was. And he'd be like, now let's get back in the Fleetwood and tell me what's a better car. Look at the comfort, the luxury. He died with that car. He's like, look at the ride.
Yeah, that was Detroit was ride for 20 years. But yeah, a Volvette would be cool. That would be cool. I'm sure what you need is another project car.
I don't. I'm driving a Tesla. It's fine.
Well, for what you do,
it's fine.
Yeah, for
I'm a
running
parent.
around. Yeah, the M5 though is worth hanging on to.
It is. I mean, I just wouldn't want to put my daughter Coco in it because we've never.
It's not like it's an unsafe car.
Ever since the fuel cell was put in, I just don't really want to put a child in front of that fuel cell.
Why don't you take that out? You don't need.
It's still in there. It's been disconnected.
Yeah, you don't need a fuel cell.
But the thing is, it was built behind like a false wall. So cops. I mean, remember when I built it at the time in 06, AI and I were discussing it. We didn't know. We thought we might get pulled over, and we wanted to legitimately say that we were not doing anything illegal.
Yeah.
And so, all the cannonball guys today, the fuel cell is like this
It's
thing.
like ratchet strapped to their spare tire.
And so you open the
well.
trunk, these people are criminals. They're criminals when they're parked. This is clearly like 10 kinds of illegal.
It looks like they're moving liquid fentanyl.
And so it would be a bit of an operation to actually remove it. So it has been bypassed now, so it's just a stock fuel tank. But I just, it would be such a tragic thing if I'm trying to be cool and taking Coke around in that car and something happens. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess you have to be the parent of a young child to think that way.
But last week I bought her a pink helmet and to put her in the Morgan.
If you're willing to put her in a Morgan 3-wheeler, the fuel cell in an M5 is not a concern.
But know this, okay? She has not been in it. She's only seen it, and there's no law against it. And also, at one point when I was working at Argo, we were discussing marketing videos that demonstrated safety. And so I went and watched like the history of like Volvo commercials and to understand it. And as I was watching the videos, and I was trying to imagine like what would a fun video be to demonstrate safety in a self-driving car. And as I was writing the script, I'm like, wow. I remembered my failed TV show pitch from 2008. And one of the episodes I pitched was that we would, of 2014, because I already had the Morgan. One of the episodes was I was going to put a baby seat on the luggage rack of the Morgan 3-wheeler. No law against it. and I was going to put a fake baby in it.
Yeah, just drive.
Wailing. Drive around in different cities to see how long in each city it would take before I was pulled over. I would rank the cities by how much they cared about kids.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
Wait, that is funny. But you saying Argo just reminded me that we wanted to talk about the law in San Francisco now that is saying that autonomous companies such as Cruise and Waymo can now operate 24/7.
Yes.
Anywhere in the city, right? Is that true?
Yeah.
Not geofenced? And what are the other
Well, the limitation is whatever they can do. But,
Right,
yeah.
but not limited by law.
Yeah.
And what are the other restrictions of the law that were limited? Those are pretty much it, right?
I think that's it.
And residents of the cities have mixed opinions, right? Right?
There is controversy.
And
I'm not sure how much of it is. I'm not sure how much of the pro or con sides of it, how much of the city that actually represents. I don't know. So the guy who runs the SF, the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Authority, Jeffrey Tumlin, is a great guy. And he has been pretty even-handed. He said, we want this to work, but we would like more transparency. There are people, so he represents the city in that case. There are people who are take a much more aggressive stance against AV, and he's actually, I think, pretty reasonable. So there are people out there putting cones on the cars.
Yeah, they're tricking them with cones.
And I mean, what do you think of that?
It's funny. I think it's very funny.
So, despite my pedigree as the founder of the Human Driving Association, I'm really opposed to that, and I'll tell you why. So, having been both a critic of self-driving and worked in the industry, it's very clear to me that the technology is inevitable. The only question is, which company do you want deploying it? And who do you trust? We don't trust every company that builds cars or makes medication or vaccines or anything else. There's good actors, bad actors in every case. And so the thing which annoys me, and maybe you can help me articulate this because I haven't maybe, is the guys putting the cones on the vehicles. If the end goal is to make the streets safer, a system approach to making streets safer is the only way. So you need a combination of protected bike lanes, traffic calming, a better driver assistance, and autonomous vehicles once they're demonstrably safe or safer than humans. And on top of all of that, what's the final piece of the puzzle? Every person driving a car should be trained at a higher level too.
Of course.
So all of these things have to be corroborate or mutually supporting system of policy and technology. And to go after AV for unsafe behavior now in San Francisco with that scale of aggression and hostility is not necessarily productive, but it's also very easy. Whereas you never see demonstrations in front of the California DMV to increase licensing standards.
Sure.
So it would be really easy to do that, but no one does because we just accept that people can drive however they want.
Right. Do you, what I see is when I say the traffic cone thing is funny.
Yeah.
What I mean is if the goal of the people doing it is to demonstrate that AV tech cannot improvise around a traffic cone in a very, very basic way, it is a good visual example of the fact that even a day one 16-year-old permit holder can go bloop and go around the cone. So as a visual representation of that,
it's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yes.
But I agree with you in principle that it doesn't really solve the bigger problem. No. And I do think that from what I understand about the companies operating in San Francisco right now that are offering level 4 taxi rides, they're pretty much doing them in good faith and as responsibly as you can. Would you say that's accurate?
Well, there's...
they're operating their own vehicles under commercial liability insurance.
Sure.
They're not selling a product to somebody and going, have fun.
Here's what's weird about it is like since I live in Phoenix, I ride in Waymos all the time. And so it is very clear that in Phoenix, no one's demonstrating against Waymo deployment in Phoenix. They just disappear into the fabric of the city. People use them. They like them. It's fine. It's for me, a fully baked product. The UI is great. The UX is great. It shows up when I want. I'm all good with it.
And Phoenix is an obvious place for them because it's so car-centric.
Yeah.
It's such a wide grid, and there's so few pedestrians.
Yeah,
it's an
easy place to do it. It's why Waymo's there.
Yeah.
I gave Waymo a lot of grief for many years, saying their pace of expansion is too slow. Like, why don't they get out there? Why don't they do it? But actually, now that we've seen in San Francisco how hard it is to do, I actually give Waymo credit for taking such a slow and measured approach and trying to solve the hardest part, which is the human part. So every luxury product, every product on earth has got a customer service line, and you hope when you call someone answers. In a Waymo, you press the button, you got a person in like 1 second, and it gets solved. Autonomous vehicles are going to need something like this for the foreseeable future, and the goal of every AV company is to increase the ratio of vehicles that don't need help to person waiting for the call.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and in a perfect world, no one has to take calls because they're all perfect, but that's never going to happen. So to cut their costs and increase safety, the tech's got to be better, but there's always got to be someone there ready to take the call. This is a customer service function. It's not a failure technology function. It's a customer service function.
This sounds like a charging station, by the way. The same thing as a charging station.
Yes.
The tech exists. It's the fucking service of it that's fucked.
So when you say, like, among the very smart things you've said was when you redefined the electric charging problem, it's not a range anxiety problem. It's an infrastructure anxiety problem.
Yeah.
And eventually, in places like Texas, it's a grid anxiety problem.
Yeah.
So so when Elon Musk talks about full self-driving is a solved problem, what Tesla does not have today is an office full of people taking calls for when full self-driving beta can't resolve something. They rely on their own owners to solve it. You cannot deploy a robotaxi fleet that way. So unless you create the Turo of self-driving with Teslas, but someone's going to have to stand up an organization with a call center to take those calls, and there needs to be a remote guidance function.
Sure.
So take Tesla off the table.
Which Waymo and Cruise have.
Correct.
Yes.
And so why does the U.S. military, among the reasons the U.S. military is so effective, is that the logistical chain behind every soldier on the ground can be up to 10 people deep. And there are many different terms for it, but when you look at FedEx and UPS, you see a lot of veterans there, these people who understand operational depth of bench. How many people are behind the vehicle or the person doing the job? And so clearly Waymo's got serious operational depth of bench. And at Argo, I got to see Argo building that out before the company shut down. And I'm not as familiar with what Cruise's depth of bench looks like, but when you look at the vehicles that are on the streets of San Francisco now and the types of issues that are happening, you can, if you pay close attention, start to infer what's happening. So when people who are opponents of autonomous vehicles say, oh, it can never work, it's all crap, the edge cases will foil them forever. Well, what's really happening? So a vehicle, we've seen Waymos and Cruises stop for a variety of reasons. How long before the vehicles get moving again? Mm-hmm. How many of them are stopped? Where are they stopped? Why are they stopped? Is it unsafe or merely an inconvenience? Safety and inconvenience are two very different things.
Sure.
And so people are grouping what are minor inconveniences during the growing pains of a useful tech with safety issues. And that is not...
it's not fair.
It's not fair.
Yeah.
And so there is... Elon Musk's maximalist position, which is any criticism of any automation kills people, is absurd.
Yeah. Because
there's a good faith way to deploy that's responsible, and then there's a bad faith way to do it. And so I do think that Cruise and Waymo more than Cruise are good faith actors. And I know great people at Cruise. But if you look at the data, it would seem, the data's not complete, but it would seem that Waymo, having spent an extra 10 years in Phoenix, has given them an advantage that Cruise is still working out.
So what
would seem.
what are the big problems in San Francisco? Is it just unpredictability?
Well, you have
pedestrians
a denser, more complex place.
Right.
Look, when there was a video last week of a cruise vehicle that drove into concrete.
The wet concrete.
Yeah, a few days later, Waymo went past that location and had no problem.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between them.
And that is a very tough one, unless it's unless there's just orange barricades all over the place.
Well, if you've got cones there,
Yeah.
a few things happen before an AV stops or has an incident or a crash. Like you have a perception problem. Does it see something? Then, having seen it, does it identify it correctly?
Yeah.
And then having identified correctly, can it predict what that thing is doing or going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then having made that prediction, what does the motion planner or path planner decide to do about that thing in motion? And if the thing is static, what to do about that? And so at every point in that chain, there is some automation. And then eventually, when the system cannot or will not decide what to do, you might ping operations HQ, and then at that point, a person makes the call. And then there's two ways to resolve it: remote guidance (RG) or teleoperation. The responsible companies will generally say that remote guidance is safer and better than teleoperation, and their theory is that remote guidance has a person who gives a go no go command, and the vehicle still uses its onboard compute and logic to execute that command.
That's remote guidance?
That's remote guidance.
Okay.
So
teleoperation is you've got a steering wheel and pedals, and you're actually controlling.
On the RG, in the RG school of thought, the person might even have a map and draw the path that the vehicle should take, but the vehicle still uses the onboard compute. And behind that logic is that less information has to go through a wireless network to get to the vehicle.
Okay.
And since wireless networks can have latency issues, and
especially in cities.
Correct. That the less information you have to transfer to execute a safety critical command, the better.
Yeah.
The teleoperations people are a wide continuum. On the safer end of that are the folks who are bumping right up against the RG folks, who are bonding together multiple networks. They can network hop, and then there are some proprietary technologies they deploy, all the way to, and then they would speed limit the vehicles. It'll only work up to 5 miles an hour, 2 miles an hour. And then on the other end of the teleop column are the guys who want to remote drive a vehicle through traffic over time.
Yeah.
And so that's a wide continuum. The RG school is quite conservative, and that's where Argo was. That's where Waymo is. Although maybe Waymo's doing things I don't know about. And I imagine Cruise is doing that too. And so, but no matter what you're doing, there is a time interval between when the vehicle stops and someone is pinged back home. It could be seconds, it could be longer. And so depending where the stoppage happens, it could go from a convenience problem to a safety issue.
Yeah.
Is it in the middle of an intersection? Is it in front of a firehouse? And so this controversy in San Francisco is the sum of many inconveniences, a couple of safety incidences, plus a broader issue of if you want to deploy in a city, are you going a year in advance and asking everyone in the city, how do you feel about it?
Right.
Or are you just showing up Uber style? And
I think Silicon Valley has already demonstrated
the new Uber style.
They're just fucking showing up.
But, you can see that there are still different approaches. So, I don't have a comprehensive list of everything Waymo and Cruise have done to engage the city of San Francisco. But in Phoenix, after many years of trial and error, there is a good relationship Waymo has with the city, and Cruise does too.
But here's a interesting question. Well, here I go calling my own question interesting. Yeah. Does it make sense to deploy in San Francisco
at all,
as opposed to deploying in other places that more resemble Phoenix's landscape first? Why not? And it doesn't necessarily have to be either or, but why not go from Phoenix to Houston, to other places that are heavily, maybe I've answered my own question because it's heavily car dependent, and putting more cars on the road won't necessarily solve this problem.
Think of it like this: there is a team of very smart people at every one of these companies in the strategy, team, whose job it is to look at cities and then have there's a matrix of all the criteria that make it attractive or not attractive. And so the factors that they rank, and I remember seeing these boards at Argo, and it was actually the most fun thing I got to do is see these sheets, because they would send away teams to investigate and go to a city all over the world. And so you have first just weather. Right. So how hard is the winter? And then you align the weather conditions on their worst day, snow, with the capabilities of the sensors of the vehicles, projected 2 to 4 years out.
Sure.
Because by the time you deploy, your sensors may just be good enough to be a 365-day vehicle. And then you have the regulatory environment. Is there any chance that the state or the local government could pass a law which would impede or render tens of millions of dollars, worthless because you can't work there long term? Then you have to cost real estate. You have to have depots that are in proximity to the geofence, where you're going to deploy. Another factor is what is the distance? So if you look at an Uber driver heat map, have you ever looked at it? What that looks like? Oh, if you open the Uber driver app, you can see in real time the heat map of demand with pricing on it for the rides.
So that basically tells an Uber driver where to go to pick up fares.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So, all these companies have anticipated working with Uber or Lyft and or, running their own app. So they need to know this data. And so the downtown to airport run or vice versa is the most profitable generally, or intra-downtown. And so you look at the app, and so the distance...
Here's what it looks like.
So the distance from the airport to the high demand zone, what is that distance? Can it be done via streets, or does it require highway? Is it a high speed highway or is it a medium speed highway? And then you align your sensor capabilities for several years forward to those conditions. Then you add all these things together. Then there is a more fungible number, which is do people's driving behavior, how closely does it align with the law, which is like a cultural factor. Then there is pedestrian behavior. How closely do pedestrian behavior align with
crosswalks and lights?
So in a New York City, that number is
Impossible.
probably on a scale of 1 to 10, they align at a level of 2. Also,
that would probably be the hardest in America place to deploy, right?
New York and Boston. And so
Boston.
And you also have navigational complexity and other factors. Ability to stop. Can you stop and do a pickup or drop on a busy street without impeding traffic, which is part of what Waymo and Cruise are finding out now. Because if you obey the law to the letter, you will impede traffic. And which is a safety factor, but also goes against culture of some
Somebody
places.
wrote I forget who it was, but wrote a great article about how first it would be a nuisance, but actually riders of rideshare companies actually don't want their drivers
to obey the law.
And
in fact, we usually tell cab drivers, stop right here. If they want a tip, they will stop there.
And if I get in a rideshare or a cab and they're going exactly the speed limit, I get real annoyed.
I mean, this is where I give, Waymo and Cruise are trying to find out hard things about our culture while building a business, which requires them to do it safely. These are multiple things that, with great tension between them, that we don't expect of human cab drivers, which comes back to the hypocrisy of the people putting cones on cruise vehicles. Because if safety was the only thing we cared about, we would have no problem with every cab driver and AV obeying the law 100% of the time. Because we would just go slow all the time. But safety is not the only thing people care about. Much as we want it to, and as a parent, it's first and foremost in my mind. So those are the factors going to city selection. And there was the city selection process. It's not purely on that matrix. There's still a command decision made by a leader, a CEO. Like Argo going to Miami, which happened before I worked for Argo, was like a real wild card, like almost a Hail Mary, because they had a state-level preemption law passed by a then State Senator Jeff Brandes, who should come on your show sometime, passed one of the first laws in the country which disallowed local municipalities from passing laws regulating AV. So state level preemption, you can test, you can deploy. So it's a friendly city, regulatory wise, and it's a city with terrible transit. So high
also
demand.
terrible drivers.
Terrible drivers. So every factor was in favor of an AV company deploying there. It is actually incredible that the other companies who had more money and more time didn't go there. So Argo had it to themselves for years, and there was basically zero friction with the city at all. Friendlier even than Phoenix was for Waymo. And recently, I think Cruise announced that they're going to start testing down there, which is really smart because you have a highly receptive environment. Even though Miami is more complex than a Phoenix or some of the other southern cities, it has even more attractive components to it.
Yeah.
So,
interesting.
Yeah. If it were me, going back in time, San Francisco is a big cactus to swallow.
Yeah.
And you can't unswallow it.
The driving there, like as a human, the driving there is very complicated. It is a complex place to drive a car.
Yeah. And then you have a new factor in recent years, which is you have homeless encampments and unpredictable, and I don't mean to say this in like a cruel way, you have, with the drug problem that's happening, you have unpredictability that almost cannot be modeled.
Yeah.
You just can't, because you could say there's
no model for meth.
I don't want to say jaywalker, because jaywalker is like a toxic term to me.
Sure, yeah.
People may
wander into the street.
But there's a big difference between people who choose to cross the street against the light because they think they can make it, and people who are ill or on drugs who will wander the street. It happened to me in LA last night.
Yeah.
You can't model that.
Yeah.
And there's a vandalism component which exists in any city, but is very unusual. And there's generally two kinds: people who are curious, who want to mess with the car, and people who want to there's no reason to break into an autonomous vehicle. But the vandalism component in a city like San Francisco downtown at night is, how do you model that?
Yeah.
So, and you don't want, there was a scandal years ago about, there was an app I think called Red Maps, which
sounds familiar.
It was like 10 years ago, where it gave you routing.
It was to routed you
but
around
avoided
high crime areas.
But of course, that is
that.
But there's of course a racism component to that.
Yeah, it sounds an awful lot like redlining.
Yeah, so how are you defining those areas?
Yeah.
And what makes them dangerous? And what is the criteria? And so
I remember that they don't route you around the white collar crime areas. I noticed. Greenwich, Connecticut hedge funds are very safe according to Red Maps.
So,
meanwhile,
there's a tension, there's a push pull versus how you deploy, where do you deploy. Where's the demand? Now, the irony of the CPUC vote is that, Waymo, anecdotally, was very cautious in the days before and the days after with the number of vehicles on the road in order to show, I think from an optics standpoint, some humility and to reduce risk. Cruise, anecdotally, were like, we're free and clear to do whatever we want. And in the week after the vote, Cruise had a number of incidents, which one would say were suboptimal. And so those two approaches are not technology approaches. They are like leadership approaches.
Organization approaches.
What is the culture of the company you want deploying anything? Can you imagine if airports were like, we're going to put the runway, 1925, we're building a runway right here over these schools.
Yeah.
And the planes might work, they might not.
Yeah.
Versus we're going to have the runway pointed this way.
Yeah.
And we will come up with patterns that reduce low-level flights over this area.
Right.
And there's something analogous to that approach. And I hope that my friends at Cruise, and there's some good people there, I hope that the good actors win out in how they proceed.
So. Interesting. Yeah. All right. That is thorough. We've got a bunch of Patreon questions, which I want to discuss. But before we do, real quick, I've been tasked with writing yet another column for Road and Track on EV converted classic cars, which is something that I am somewhat passionate about. Not, and I should say, understanding that people can do whatever the fuck they want to their own cars, and I don't give a shit. Whatever makes you happy, do whatever you want. Pay someone hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't care, and I don't think a car per se. I don't think any one car is sacred. You know what I mean? You bought a cool. I don't care if it's an F50. take the motor out and put a Tesla motor in if that's what makes you happy. I don't give a shit. But I have opinions on these things, and I want to know yours.
I want to know yours.
Well, I think there are old cars where the powertrain, the standard powertrain that it came with, is the thing and a experience that is worth having. That is why a lot of people would want to buy such a car. And there are old cars where the powertrain is a liability. Either it's just not very good.
VW bus.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of power. It doesn't. If it's not powerful enough to drive on modern roads, modern speeds, or it's inefficient, or it's unreliable, or it's not fun to use. And there are plenty of examples of that. And I think that so many companies or startups are focusing on converting cars to electric and choosing the wrong cars. They're choosing cars where the powertrain is an asset and not a liability. Yes. And not the other way around.
So,
and charging a ton of money for the privilege of doing this.
So some of these guys, these are not permanent swaps.
They all talk about that. That's true, and and most, to give them credit, most people that are doing these swaps will include some measure of reversibility down the road.
So you are a skeptic or just opposed to this?
I'm not opposed to anyone doing anything.
Okay.
What bothers me is the very silly greenwashing component of it.
Yeah.
Which classic cars contribute nothing to global emissions in any significant way. The sort of misguided idea that somehow you're going to improve certain cars by converting them to electric, when in many cases, where the ones I've driven, the experience is demonstrably worse than the original car. And also they're ignoring opportunities to convert the cars that would be made better.
Because there are, a lot of cars that always had terrible powertrains.
Sure.
That could be not just reinvented, but become something fresh.
Yeah.
We've never seen before.
Grand Wagoneer. 1990s, 80s and 90s Grand Wagoneer would be a great example of that.
Yeah. Well, look, when you say some of them get worse, is it because when they retrofit or when they put in electric batteries, they're not located in a place that makes the handling worse because the weight distribution is worse?
Usually they don't make the dynamics objectively worse. It's just, and maybe I sound like a fucking old man yelling at the clouds, but I don't see any benefit to society or my own experience by having an air-cooled Porsche or a Jaguar E-Type or a Shelby Cobra without the experience of the engine.
And now when you say experience of the engine, you're referring to the noise.
The sound, the engagement with a machine, the gears, the pulses and vibrations and things that really create an excitement about that car versus simply the aesthetic of it.
So I've thought about it, not to the extent that you have. I too don't care if people buy what you want, have a great time. I feel like the market and like values will always adjust to the scarcity of a thing. There is something that hurts me deep down, like an air-cooled Porsche losing its motor if it can't be retrofitted back.
Yeah.
And for every car that is done to that it cannot be restored to its original condition, that will spike the prices of the other cars, and the market adjusts to it. So yeah, I get that. I'm imagining that people who can afford to do these conversions can afford whatever.
Yeah. And
should they sell their conversion, they'll sell the motor with it. So it's probably not a factor. I think there is definitely something to what you're saying about the original design and purpose and experience and engagement of an internal combustion car, a car that was built and manufactured was internal combustion. There's no question. I'm more interested in the people who say that like a Rimac is soulless and therefore you should buy a pure ice hypercar, Rimac Solus. If one deconstructs your argument, the soul of the machine lives in its original incarnation. It does. And our connection to it, to that soul, is a connection with its original incarnation. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. But I think it's important that that in the shadow of that correct feeling, that we not associate engagement solely with the dimension of sound. Because if you've driven a Rimac, right?
I have.
Okay, me too. A Rimac very wisely seems to have little to no sound insulation.
Yeah.
And the noise that it does make
a sound.
It makes a sound.
Yeah.
And so our entire lives, the 20th century is the history of human driver association of sound with engagement. And in much the way that our hearts beat at different rates, a runner is running. And at one point, their heart rate is increased, but they've got to go from marathon mode to sprint mode for the last bit. And there's a chemical change in their bodies. And they make that final sprint. I think there's something inside us with a manual transmission that resembles, so we associate changing gears with the way athletes, when we do physical feats, make a decision go from marathon to sprint mode like a runner. And that's in that case, that association of engagement of our physical bodies with the machines we control can only occur with a manual transmission internal combustion car, which makes a Rimac, which has only a single linear sound it makes, alien to us.
Sure.
However, there is something gained that none of us have ever experienced. Very few people who are, unless they were professional drivers, have ever understood, which is in a Rimac or other pure electric car, we are freed of these associations and are forced to engage only with the machine as it is and must connect only with the linear power output. And our skills and what the car can do are closer together without a layer of emotion.
Interesting.
It's a theory.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't have deep evidence of this, it's really anecdotal. A lot of people buy cars. They put bigger exhaust on it, they row through gears, manual or paddle shift, and they think they're good drivers because they are totally invested in the engagement, but they've made zero intellectual investment in the physics of the car.
True.
And so
Definitely
if you
true.
eliminate the emotional layer we associate with sound, we are forcing people to listen only to what the car is doing and what is happening.
That's interesting.
Which is very different from what most people, I mean, the entire universe of aftermarket exhausts is the sale of products to trick people into believing they have engagement.
Or power.
Yeah. And that, that's why a Tesla or a Taycan or these other cars turn off the fake sound stuff. Some people complain that they're hearing more road noise, but what they're hearing is things that were always there, masked by the engine.
Of course.
Or that's why
one of the things I like about an EV is actually that you can hear individual tire working all the way from the cheapest Tesla to a Rimac. And I have nothing against Rimac. It's an amazing product. I was referred to more a classic car, which is an experience that takes you to a place. Maybe it's a point in time, maybe it's a point in the past, maybe it's a point within you. And as other cars, the everyday cars like the Teslas or my Ford or whatever, and the hypercars move towards this EV, for those of us who wish to engage with a mechanical device, I think there are great mechanical devices that are so rewarding and do provide an experience. And I just don't think I'm not looking to a classic car to get the best possible electric experience.
Well, I think what you're describing, or the thing you have an issue with, is a transitional period. Because eventually, Porsche and every company that is in the business of making cars are going to make great electric cars. And eventually, they'll make electric cars alongside, they'll make ICE, hybrid, and electric. And eventually, pure ICE will go away. And there'll be hybrid and electric. And eventually, hybrid will go away. And so these conversions are a very niche thing for a very niche audience that has unlimited cash until eventually they will move on.
Yeah.
I mean, look, once we get past EV hypercars, at some point, not in our lifetimes, there will be miniature fusion and fission reactors, and power will be a non-issue.
Yeah.
At which point, and then beyond that, we're going to lose tires completely, and there'll be vehicles hovering. And so this will go on forever but really it won't, because once you've moved past, fission and fusion reactors, and your vehicles have no tires, they're hovering, then we're getting a whole nother universe of stuff. But it will continue in our minds.
It's just, to me, I think it's just more of like a bummer that these niche businesses are really focusing on not necessarily cars where the overall experience will be vastly improved by EV. They're focusing instead on sports cars that are already great and where the audience is used to spending a bunch of money on resto mods. By chasing the audience that spends a bunch of money on these cars, they're missing an opportunity to build some great electric conversions that really would be.
But isn't that because those cars are popular because people are into sports cars, sexy cars, stuff like that?
But it's the same thing. It's a Silicon Valley mindset of moving towards the money versus really innovating to make people.
But if you innovate, if you convert, I don't know, some weak thing, VW buses,
TVR.
that's a bad example.
No.
Like,
59 Cadillac Eldorado. Yeah. With an EV powertrain, you could achieve the smoothness and the luxury that was impossible for General Motors to do in 1959.
True, but we know from Radwood, like we've watched our generation move away from muscle cars and classic cars in general. So, as I agree with you, that would be a great fit.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be harder to convince the current market to go drive those
Mercedes
cars.
300 TD wagon. Euro bumper.
I'd like to have that. Yeah.
Instead of a 80 horsepower 5-cylinder diesel,
would be good.
You would have
I just
a
still think it's a
300
smaller
horsepower with a battery pack in a beautiful wagon, where this car was beautifully made, looks great, and the powertrain, although known for its durability, is not part of the engagement of the experience.
So you remember, not the Microlino, but there was that other thing, Nissan Figaro, or who made that thing?
You mean like my wife's car, like the POW?
No,
the
Figaro. Was
the
that thing
Figaro,
called? Yeah. Like that was a funny thing because it looked old, but it was new.
Right.
Like, I would like these science fiction movies like Dark City and other like the near future or mid future, the cars look old again. Yeah. Like, I'd love for that to happen.
You're like Back to the Future 2.
Yeah.
Where the Citroen DS is the future taxi, right?
So what I'd like to see, what you described, EV retrofits of cars that were underpowered, cool. What I'd like to see is those old cars, somebody make a retrofit driver assistance package too.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to see. Like that was just a thing you just put in the car and it links in and it's done.
Isn't that like a George Hotz project?
Yeah. I mean, I wish there was the aftermarket. I think is going to begin having that.
Yeah.
As cars get less fun to work on.
I actually saw at Pebble Beach, I believe the company's called Gateway, and they have a Bronco that has
driver assistance.
Yes.
A
classic Bronco with a modern Ford powertrain in it out of like an F-150. It's like a Coyote motor and a 10-speed auto. And they have... I
like that a lot.
And it has, I don't think it has like ADAS, but it's got ABS, and it's got it has
more than it has non-zero driver assistance.
It does have some type of driper assistance, possibly blind spot monitoring.
I love that.
They also make an EV Bronco.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
good for them.
And by the way, John Ward is also making an EV Bronco at Icon, and I remember he basically told me a couple years ago that he wouldn't. because it was a pain in the ass. And he basically said, now, I said, you're really going to do it? He goes, the customers are asking for it.
Of course.
But a Bronco is a good example because Broncos are shit boxes.
Okay, you know what the best example would be? I would love to have an electric Citroen DS, an electric SM, all of those things.
Yeah.
Citroen should be relaunched again, but just make those cars electric.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you rebranded Lucid as Citroen. You just have to change the badge. The car's already
it's
there.
So cool.
It's basically that.
You know, did you see the what's the new $300,000 Cadillac sedan?
The Celestique.
Yeah. So all these people.
That's kind of Citroen-like
Yeah.
as well,
How come no one's talking about that? It is like that.
It is very Citroen XM or what's Xantia?
CX.
CX, right?
CX.
Yeah.
The XM is.
XM is a satellite radio. Is that also a Citroen?
That was a Citroen. That was a really weird one. That came after the CX.
Okay, yeah, that's the one from the '80s, right? It's like almost
late
Zagato,
80s, late 80s, early 90s.
Right. Let's go to the Patreon while we have some showtime left. We've got. You want to ask questions of our guests? You want to talk to us? Do you have to hit the road soon?
No.
Okay. Alex has to drive to Phoenix. I'm sure we've covered some other things here, but we will go to it. Of course, if you want to ask questions, if you want to get an ad-free listening experience, you want to get the show earlier than everybody else and get an extra show every month, patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast. Also, exclusive access to the watch I designed. It did not make it past the Patreon.
I wanted one. They were so nice.
Well, it's too late. I'm sorry you wanted one.
So
I didn't
cool.
know. But we have a new colorway coming out
Yeah.
in a couple of months, and I will make sure that you are on the first to get one. Miguel says tech company. Wait, hang on a minute. Sorry. I just want to make sure that we haven't covered, because we've probably covered a lot of what people ask. Okay. At what point do you think developing AV tech should be put to a vote at election time? I didn't agree to these beta tests. I don't want AVs, but these companies keep pushing it on us. Now, this was a vote in San Francisco.
There was a vote, yeah.
There was a vote.
Yeah.
So at what point should this tech be put to a vote? It was voted on in San Francisco.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I don't. These things are deployed in such small numbers that by the time they're deployed at scale, these issues will be resolved. I don't think this is a problem. I think it's a nuisance. I think generally it's a nuisance.
What about with Tesla FSD?
Oh, that's a different story. The Tesla FSD testing is, the major AV companies are very serious about safety. Some more so than others, but Tesla's in a different universe.
Yeah,
and I wish
move fast and crash into ambulances.
Yeah,
that's their motto.
I have FSD beta on my car. Like I would never. I don't use it, and no one who's in my car with me ever wants me to even use autopilot. So that's more of an issue.
Will you use it on the highway going home today across the desert?
Yes, I use autopilot on the highway, but nowhere else, and I never use FSD beta, even though I have it on my car.
It's pretty shitty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, we've discussed this on this show. The quality of the safety driver or engineer on board determines the final safety of the vehicle, because safety is always a system, and the weakest link is going to be the person monitoring the vehicle. And the average Tesla owner, even a super fan, is just not going to be as well trained as a professional person from a real company.
Yeah.
So.
Tom says, Alex, would you trade your Tesla for another EV like a Lucid, or is there anything that would entice you back to a conventional gas-powered car?
For my commuter car, I'll be EV for the rest of my life. I love my Tesla. I had a Lucid. Fantastic.
Did you get a Lucid?
No, but I borrowed a Lucid for a couple of weeks. It was just great. It depends on, the charging network. And if I had a charger at home, I would own a Lucid in a heartbeat.
Do you not have a charger at your place?
Not in Phoenix.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Oh.
And that's
the Phoenix charge network is not great.
No.
I was surprised at when Zach and I went out to see Bert Kreischer, when I went out to go see Pearl Jam. I've driven to Phoenix in EVs now like 4 times. And the charge network to get from here to Phoenix, not bad. Some easy places, some obvious places on the 10 to stop. But in Phoenix, very limited number of chargers. I think because a lot of people have freestanding homes there.
Yes. So yeah, I would totally. I mean, I don't think I'd own a pure gas commuter car again, but sports car, yes.
Retrofit says, please recommend a scarf for fall 2023.
Anything that's highly contrasting with the rest of your outfit is a win.
Great. Michael Cosgrove says, let's see. What is the next frontier of transportation besides a fully autonomous vehicle?
Oh, tons of options. So
eVTOL?
Well, okay. So there is I don't think there's an RV record. There's no actual.
How is that? No official RV record.
No official RV record.
Someone should have bought that Bonneville fucking GM. Remember that
Yes,
thing?
yes,
The GMC
yes,
Bonneville
yes.
thing? Just cannonball that bitch.
I mean, pick any class. If you really want to get granular, I wanted to do the pre-1980 French vehicle record. And just then the pre-70, pre-60.
That's not next frontier, though.
It's last frontier. But I mean, I'm surprised that no one has taken cannonballing to full period correct. Pre-1980, maps, tires, electronics, no phones, scrutiny.
Because even in the throwback cannonballs, they're using
cell phones.
Yeah.
So I mean, you want to do it right. Like you have to. I'm not saying for safety you shouldn't use pre-1980 tires, but everything else, like your paper maps,
leaded gas.
Your paper maps need to be printed in that year.
Oh God!
And yeah, I mean, go full on, show your skill.
Yeah,
I mean, it's too easy. A Camry could beat a 308 cross country.
Right.
Where's the skill?
Yeah.
So let's see some commitment.
I tell you, by the way, I think I did because I saw you in Scottsdale last year when I drove my 328 there, that it wasn't until after Donnie restored my car that I all of a sudden believed Doug Turner and David Diem.
Yeah.
When I first bought that car, I was like, there's no fucking way these guys did triple digits across the country. And then I got the car back and I went, you know what? They probably did.
Absolutely.
That car in spec, correct spec, is easily capable of sustaining 120 to 140 miles an hour for a long period of time.
Can you imagine like 6-7 guys in a garage, 1981? Guy shows up with 328 fully prepped with another guy's got a 928 fully prepped.
It would have been.
Can you imagine like the testosterone in the room? Like if you could have lit a match, the whole place would explode.
Pass the code. Tommy's Boo says, was or is there any cannonball style thing done in Europe or any other part of the world?
Well, there's that
Peking to Paris.
Yeah, well, there's
original.
There's the guys in the young guy in England. I forget his name, who did north to south, and the police prosecuted him.
Oh, in England?
Yeah, you should get him on the show.
Oh, really?
He's great. I forget his name, but he's great. Tommy Davies is his name, and he did north to south, fully prepped vehicle, everything, and then
it's not that far.
No, but the traffic cameras, the enforcement is quite severe, and so they came after him. They prosecuted him full on, and I think he got off. But they went after him hard.
All right.
And so you look in Europe, TSPOL, the Traffic Division of Interpol, is pretty hardcore, and in France and in Switzerland, you are not doing this. They will take the car.
Yeah.
And in Germany, they're less tolerant. I mean, the future is the past.
It's not cultural there. It's cannonball and that sort of westward migration, manifest destiny shit is so Americana. Even though it's rooted in like horrible racism and fucking genocide, it's still such an Americana thing that you got to find another country where that's part of their culture.
Do you know the story of what's his name? Oh my God, I'm spacing the big guy from Germany. He did the gumball. Kim Schmitz.
Oh yeah.
You know about
Kim.com.
You know about the Ultimate Rally?
That's him,
yeah.
right?
Do you know the story of the Ultimate Rally?
God, I haven't heard about this in forever.
So the super summary would be back in 2008 or 2009, he had a website. You should look up the Internet Archive of the Ultimate Rally. It would look like NORAD, Mission Control. It was like $100,000 to enter, and there were cash prizes at every checkpoint. And the routes were North Korea, like somewhere in the Middle East and part of like Russia, and cash prize at every checkpoint. And so he claimed
I buried $300,000 in North Korea.
So he claimed that he had people signing up for it, and he and I spoke. And
this is the Firefest of gumballing.
At the time, I admired him because he was the only person besides myself who called out gumball for the
deaths and things that happened in 2008. And Kim Schmitz, he was the only guy who supported me. When I went out in the media out in 07 after the crash in Macedonia, people were killed, I came out and said, guys, whenever someone says it's not a race, it's a rally, you're kidding, because there are absolutely people like me. We are racing using the rally as cover.
Yeah.
And Schmitz came out and be like, Royce, that's absolutely right. He's like, I was racing. I'm like, and Schmitz, you were the worst. He's like, I was the worst. So this event, when I spoke to him, I said, Kim, you cannot have cash prizes at the checkpoints. People will hire armed mercenaries who will hold the other teams at gunpoint. He's like, exactly. And so
Oh my God.
I thought actually it would make a great movie, but it would not an event that I wanted to do. And then it didn't happen. But that is the closest I ever heard of someone really taking a first principles approach to illegal racing. Bless Kim Schmitz for that.
You want to talk about fucking short-sightedness? Back in the day, I was on a reality show called the Ford Focus Rally. Do you remember this? I don't know if you remember this. 2010. Turns out this was actually the very first ever Hulu original programming show. And they hired the guy named Bert Van Munster, who made The Amazing Race. Guy's a fucking character. And rolled around and did the road trip with us in his Ferrari 599, by the way. Car guy. And it was basically The Amazing Race in Ford Focuses, not like public transportation, right? I did it with Brittany Boddington, right? She was my partner, and we were the red team. And it was like 8 cars, and it was, it was paid for by Ford, right? And so you had to go from place to place to place, and the first person to get there would win the leg. It was a race, but you weren't allowed to speed. Okay? And furthermore, we weren't using maps. They wanted to show off Ford's sync system. So every car was the same. Every GPS was the same. Nobody could fucking speed. The cars were tracked with GPS. And yet, the first people there won. So unless you major fucked up, you'd be a car right there. It'd be in front of you. And so, the speed limit's 65. Well, I'm going to set my cruise control. We realized the GPSs were a couple miles an hour. There was a little fucking flex in them. So I set mine to 67, and I'm just creeping, and they, and we'd get yelled at over and over. Red car, I see you hit 73 miles an hour here, and blue car, you hit 76 miles an hour. And they gave us these bullshit, and we're not talking about gumball pace. We're talking about speeds that were 5 to 10 miles an hour over the limit, where if you were just going to the fucking office, you would be hitting these speeds. And they had this safety guy, this fucking Hollywood safety. It's not worth it. Meanwhile, there's a $50,000 plus a Ford Focus for each of you prize if you win this thing. And after the 6th or 7th safety lecture where they go, it's not worth it, I stood up and I go, listen, I've done these rallies 4 or 5 times now. I've organized them. I go, this is the only time in my fucking entire life where speeding is 100% worth it. You are offering us cash prizes and free cars if we get there first. It is worth it. It is absolutely worth it to speed. And the very next day, big meeting, whole cast, whole crew, new rules. Being there first doesn't matter anymore. They eliminate halfway through the shoot. They eliminated it. They're like, someone went back there and went, this fucking guy's right. We're absolutely incentivizing.
So how would you win?
You would win by doing these other challenges when you got there that were unrelated to driving.
Wow.
Yeah.
In 2000,
no lawyer actually went through this before.
In 2007 or 8, I was hired by Mercedes to plan a rally for their classics division. And they're like, same rule, no speeding. So I'm like, well, how will they compete? I'm like, you figure it out. So my idea was you'd have a scavenger hunt type thing, but there would be a cultural educational component to it. So you would stop at museums, and there might be, you might have the Mona Lisa in a place it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And if anyone who saw it and didn't call it out as that's a fake, would lose points.
That's pretty funny.
And then you'd have impersonators of dead celebrities would hang out at the parties, and if you didn't call them out, you lost points.
You're dead. That's pretty funny.
So that was
Chris says, In the spirit of the Frederick Pohl quote on your website, a good science fiction story should be able to predict not the automobile, but the traffic jam. What are your wildest predictions about the externalities of autonomous cars?
So that quote came from my friend Joel Johnson, my consulting business partner. And that when autonomous vehicles, let's assume they reach 99% ubiquity. In our lifetimes, it's possible, but very unlikely. So when they do, there will still be people who want to drive collector internal combustion cars. And they will do so probably with real-time insurance adjustments based on how they drive. Like their phone will be in the car, and based on how they drive and where they drive, their insurance will spike or decline in real time based on their behavior. It'll be really expensive. That will happen. And there will be some type of even more illegal than ever vintage cannonball will happen at that time. But while that's going on, there'll be some kid who's probably not born yet will hack an autonomous vehicle knowing that the speed limit is, call it 80, but that the vehicle's safe to 175. And he will hack it, he will spoof its like vehicle ID, and the fastest cannonball in history will be a hacker as a passenger in the back of one of those things that gets across country in 22 hours.
Okay.
Through traffic.
Okay.
Yeah. 20 hours even.
Sure.
Yeah.
My wildest prediction is goes to Demolition Man, which is that in the future, people will need to wrestle back control from autonomous vehicles or pull an old manual car out of the museum or something in order to save the day because the computer systems will be fucking Skynetted out.
Could be. I mean,
Bad Gardener says, why is the Pajero Evo Manual not $100,000? Looks like a showstopper. I think there's a limited amount of money that someone's willing to pay for a Mitsubishi, any Mitsubishi. Like, I mean, it's a homologation Dakar vehicle. It does look cool, but it doesn't look like $100,000. I've been told they're mildly disappointing to drive. I mean, they're just little off-road trucklets at the end of the day.
Are there vehicles in Japan that are collectible vehicles whose value is like 10x what that same vehicle would be if you shipped it here?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like your thing, that thing. What's the thing you bought? That weird van. What's it called?
Oh, the Delica?
The Delica. Like,
yeah.
Okay, what is that market value here today?
20 to 25 grand for a great one.
What is it in Japan?
Less.
Really?
Definitely less.
Interesting.
Stuff is more desirable here that was not sold here. I couldn't tell you. There might be some like American muscle cars that could be more valuable over there.
Dodge vans, maybe.
Yeah, Dodge vans. Like,
is it just supply and demand, right? Like we couldn't get it, so if it's here, it's a little more expensive, and
yeah,
there it's
like
cheaper.
there's almost nothing that you couldn't buy there that you could get here that's like desirable.
There's a Citroen CX in France. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
But here,
yeah.
That's a good question. Though.
That is
I like
a good
that.
question, and I do not have an answer.
I remember I was in Mexico a few years ago, and there was some VW pickup that was so cool.
The Amarok?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's a Touareg with a pickup truck bed.
So cool.
Yeah. I was shocked they never sold that here. It seems like they
really
could have.
I think we saw them in the UK, right?
Yeah, they're sold everywhere
They
except
look
here.
weird. The body design to me looks very like Nissan Frontier-ish.
Yeah, that was neat. What do we got?
Strom Speed says, I don't know if you can talk about this. What's your take on what happened at Argo? And did that change your perspective on the success of AVs?
No, it doesn't change my perspective at all. AV is inevitable. It's a question of like the timeline and whether the good actors will, maybe outcompete the bad actors, or if another actor will go away. The Human Driving Association, I was absolutely playing both sides, but the point of it was to basically say, look, knowing that AV is inevitable, how can we save human driving? Because if you fast forward 75 years, 100 years, and AVs are ubiquitous and demonstrably safer than humans, how does anyone get to drive? And why should we drive? Should we drive at all? And if we want to, how do we do so? The only way for that to occur is for people who like driving is to understand and embrace the good automation,
right,
and to become better drivers. And why a brand like Porsche or Ferrari or any of these brands, they'll always survive as whealthy people. But how do they survive when there is a political faction that wants to increase road safety at the expense of the freedom to buy and choose to drive a car. The only way that occurs is if they develop driver assistance into driver augmentation, and people understand and embrace it while also fighting and voting to preserve their privacy.
Yeah.
And that battle has barely begun. Like,
Yeah.
people don't even understand it.
Yeah.
And we'll discuss another time. So the HDA will continue, and it's going to come
In the
back.
meantime, we should sell a T-shirt.
So the Human Driving Association, humandriving.org is the website. We have some T-shirts.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay.
But this organization has been pretty dormant for 2 years because the AV industry screwed itself a bit, and I hold Tesla responsible. But I think, look, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And Matt and I'm going to get Matt in the board of advisors.
At least we got to get the T-shirts going.
Yeah.
All right. Alan says, what is the most stable car for freeway driving across states with a footprint smaller than an E39 5 Series? Does it affect stability if it's all-wheel drive / 4x4, or if it's a coupe sedan versus a truck?
E39 is not that big a car.
No, but I mean, if you wanted a stable car, I mean, a 3 Series BMW or a C-Class Mercedes is certainly a stable highway car.
I mean, I think he wants sedan over anything else because of crosswind stuff. Right?
Aerodynamics.
A Tesla Model 3.
A Tesla Model 3 is quite stable.
Yeah.
QS.
However, the tires go fast, and I do a lot of highway driving, and that's a thing. That's a problem.
I mean, a Corvette. A Corvette, especially, a front-engine Corvette, is a phenomenal, just fucking murder miles in one of those things. Tons of trunk space, very good high-speed stability, very comfortable.
What was the button
the
on-
new Corvette rides even better.
even the new Corvette is
Yeah.
great too. Yeah.
What was the function on the old automatic Vettes from the 90s, where you bypass and go 4 to 7?
Oh, the Doug Nash, it's 80s,
Yeah,
the 4+3 transmission.
yeah.
That's some funky shit.
Yeah.
Just give me a regular 6-speed,
I had a friend
please.
who loved that.
Yeah. Muscle car folks were really into that.
I
that
think it's
kind
cool.
of thing. Yeah.
Good fuel economy.
But if you wanted something comparable to an E39 5 Series, I mean, like the E46 3 Series is very stable on the highway. That's a great highway car.
It's funny how the new 3 and 4 Series are the size of an old 5.
Yeah, I mean that's just how it goes, right? Wait till you go downstairs and you see Eric, my general manager, the E39 M5 he just bought.
Is it?
It's gray.
Oh yeah,
It's the one, they only sold 5 of them in gray.
It breaks my heart. I'd love to have an unmolested stock M5.
I mean, you could. It's gonna cost you. Zuckerman's got an Alpine White with 20,000 miles on it. It's amazing.
Love
it
those
drives so
cars.
great. Alan says, okay, wait. Okay. Are we seeing a shift in the trajectory of FSD / full autonomy? I don't like that those things are the same thing because they're listed as the same, but they're not. I'm having a hard time telling if this is brought on by market uncertainty / potential recession or a general change in the fundamental idea. I think it was oversold and we're now brought back to reality a little bit.
Well, remember, the overselling component was primarily Tesla. Cruise had some aggressive timelines that they didn't quite make, but they came close. And Waymo, they pretty much made it. I mean, Tesla's the bad actor here in the timelines. The second part of the question is interesting because the market uncertainty and recession. Look, it is really expensive to develop the technology. So before Argo shut down, I remember reading a report, an internal report, which showed how much money Cruise and Waymo and other companies had raised and what their burn rate was and how many years they had left without they're raising more. And so in the current market environment, it's very hard to raise $1, $3, $4, $5 billion. And so you need to show progress. And so the progress is, if it's not revenue, if it's not profitable, it has to be at least revenue. If it's not revenue, it has to at least show more pieces on the board. So when Cruise announces another city, what they're really trying to do is show more pieces on the board, profits be damned, to satisfy the board of GM and potentially, I don't know how much money they have from outside GM anymore. And that's the same of other companies too. And so there's a clock, and the clock is it is whenever the market inverts again and it's easy to raise money. So all these companies, everything they're doing is designed to survive that clock. And companies have a slightly different approach. So when a company announces a city, is it 2 vehicles? Is it 50? And that's what you don't see in the media reports, is how many cars, what are they doing? And years ago, Mobileye announced they were testing in New York City. Remember that? That was a major news story. And what was not a major news story was when they canceled that. And we were all shocked. Like, I immediately flew to New York. I'm like, where are these cars?
Yeah.
Couldn't find them. Nobody saw them. And then
they were gone.
went away. And so that's an example of trying to play that news cycle to satisfy, investors. So.
Last one, Matthew Robinson says, I've been lucky enough to own a JDM Integra Type R, and I fear it's ruined any future affordable performance car I may move to next. Where do you go for under $50K that can deliver the same kind of fizz, or do I just keep this forever? What sucks is that with inflation and the desirability of some of these cars, particularly JDM cars, $50K is just not that much money anymore for a great sports car. We did this math. A couple shows ago, $50K today is like $37K like 3 years ago.
So the answer is forever? Keep it forever?
I think so.
I mean, on the one hand, if you're going to have a forever car, an Integra Type R is a great car. It just is.
Is there a mark? So like a house, if you don't want to live in that house, but you don't want to sell it, you can rent the house out and live in a smaller place. Can you Turo such a car?
Oh my God, I would never do that.
I think you'd be really rolling the dice.
'Cause the only people that are going to Turo that car are going to drive it fast and hard.
Yeah, there's people who would beat the shit out of it, and it would be tough. I doubt somebody would pay 911 money for an Integra Type R. It's probably going to be someone who is going to pay a small amount of money and then treat your car like garbage.
If you're still excited by it, that's the real thing. Like, I think you keep it because this is a homologation car with a high revving NA engine, special engine. Like, you're not going to find a more exciting front-wheel drive car on sale today for under 50 grand. And a lot of the rear-wheel drive cars are going to be knocking on 50 grand or go above that.
Yeah, you'd really have to spend more to get better.
And you're still not going to have NA motor. Like, it's not, everything's going to feel heavy and different. So if you still like it, you got to keep it.
I mean, there's other options. Like if you wanted to go front engine rear drive experience, you can get a Viper for under 50 grand.
Oh, you can go used.
You can get for under 50. You can get a great Corvette. A really fucking fast Corvette. You can get a great Viper. By the way, last night I saw Chris Farley's 1997 Viper is on Bring a Trailer right now. It was very tempting. If Jim Farley doesn't buy it, I'm fucking in. I mean, you could get, a replica Cobra. Now, those things are fucking sketchy, but if you want fizz, that's a fizz.
What about all these replica, 356 Speedster guys?
They're junk.
Are they?
Yeah, you don't want one of those. Yeah, you don't want one of them. And they're probably more than 50 grand, too, on top of that. Yeah. But man, there's you might be able to still get an R32 Skyline with miles on it for under 50.
That'd be fun.
And that would be a great car.
Cayman
very
S.
fast. You could get a used Cayman S that would be really nice for under 50, or a Boxster S. Those are great choices. But they're right at that price too. So if you still like this car, you should keep this car.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to end up having a different experience that maybe you want to try.
True.
But I mean, you could get a great E30, a great
You could
E30.
get a swapped E30 probably.
A swapped E30 would be fun, or an RSTI.
My first car,
Yeah.
I loved it at the time. Was a 1990 Nissan Maxima SE.
Talk about a car that doesn't exist anymore.
You never see them.
Never.
Why don't you ever see it? It had
They
black
were driven into the ground.
white gauges.
Yeah.
I would love to.
It was a
own
97. What year? 97 or 92?
90.
So first gen.
Second generation.
The boxy one.
No, it was right after that. The first smooth one. It had 4D SC on the window.
Oh yeah, the four-door
And
sports
I loved
car.
that
Yeah.
car. And never see one.
I liked the generation right after that. The slightly more, this one you had, right? That generation?
yeah.
That's not an SE, but
No.
I liked the one after that was like the 97. That one, those were the fucking jam. Some of the rich kids at my school got those. Same thing, black, white gauges.
It was so
Those were
great.
great.
Yeah,
Do not exist. I saw one at a Radwood last year, and I fucking stared at it for like 20 minutes because I've just like, they're gone.
Is that what you got, Alex?
Yeah.
Look at the yellow fogs.
I love
French
that.
market, baby.
Yeah.
Those are cool.
Yeah. So great.
Or, you know, like a Sentra SER, which is probably
Yeah.
not as good as an Integra Type R, but
No,
it was
that's
really
fun.
cool. Yeah.
still cool.
I remember there was a guy in my high school who had a Ford Probe.
They were great.
Good looking
Ford
car.
Probe was the Mazda MX-6, and in I don't know if you could get it with the Ford. I don't think the GT had it, but the Mazda MX-6 had that KLZ V6. It was like a 2-liter V6 that revved to 8. It was fucking rad. It sounded like a rotary.
So now that you're a famous car journalist at Road and Track, one of those magazines, Road and Track or Car and Driver, had like a cover story about the Probe, and there was apparently someone at Ford thought it would replace the Mustang.
Yeah, they did. They did. It was like thinking the 928 would replace, because the Fox body was getting old and the Probe seemed very futuristic. And yeah. Yeah, so that's our show, folks. Thanks for joining us, Alex. And coming to Fast and Furious
Thanks for
musical
having me.
parody with me.
Thanks.
And I can't wait to read the story, even though I now know it.
Let me just shout out Jan, Dave, and Eric. Are great human beings.